Welcome to Creepy Vibes, where the roads are long, the nights are dark, and not everything you pass is still alive. Tonight, we're counting down 20 true late-night encounters on Texas roads. From ghost hitchhikers to things hiding in the rear view, these stories are real, terrifying, and might just make you rethink that midnight drive. Most viewers make one mistake: they leave without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Hit subscribe now before the next thing you see standing on the shoulder is staring right at you. Where are you watching from, and how late is it? Drop it in the comments. Now buckle up. The night is just getting started. He was standing in the passing lane of Highway 84, just east of Abilene, where the asphalt seems to stretch forever and the West Texas wind carries grit that never quite washes off. No shoulder to speak of, just a strip of unforgiving blacktop between two faded lines. People said he showed up sometime after midnight, and by dawn, he'd already caused 2 wrecks. The first was a cattle hauler from Sweetwater coming back from Lubbock. The driver said he saw a man just standing there, arms at his sides, staring straight ahead like he was waiting for something. He swerved hard, lost the back axle in a ditch, and totaled the rig. Said he never saw the man move. Not once. Just stared dead ahead, face blank, like he didn't even see the truck bearing down on him. The second wasn't as lucky. A red Dodge Ram doing 90 straight through the dark, no one else on the road. Slammed into something hard enough to fold the hood into the windshield. Cops found the driver dead at the scene. No seatbelt. Body half ejected through the window. But here's the thing. The windshield wasn't shattered. Just cracked. Like it had been hit by something solid, but not enough to justify the damage inside. And there were no tire marks. None. No blood on the road. No torn clothing, no bone, no bits of flesh. Nothing that said a human being had been there at all. Just the impact. And the dead man. And a dent in the hood shaped vaguely like a person's torso. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, people passing through the area at night have reported seeing him. Always the same description. 6 feet tall, rail thin. Old denim jeans and a white t-shirt with something smeared on the front oil, maybe, or blood. Nobody gets a good look. Nobody wants to stop. And those that do? Well, no one's sure. Nobody's come forward. I'm a trucker. Been on these roads since the early 2000s. I've seen my fair share of things in the dark. Coyotes running full tilt through mesquite. Flash floods that come down out of nowhere and carry off whole trailers. But this one got under my skin in a way nothing else ever has. 2 nights ago, I had a run from Midland to Waco. Took me through Abilene a little after midnight. It was dead quiet. Just the occasional radio hiss and my tires humming over the pavement. I wasn't even thinking about him, not really. I'd heard the rumors, hell. Every diner from Snyder to Brownwood was buzzing, but I didn't buy into that kind of thing. I had just passed the marker for FM 707 when I saw him. He was right in the middle of the passing lane. Back straight, arms limp at his sides. Pale. Too pale. He looked like someone halfway through a slow decay, like the color had been drained out of him. I couldn't see his face, not really, but I could feel it. You ever feel a face? Not just see it, but feel the way someone's staring at you? That's what it was like. My gut turned cold and I felt the wheel tug in my hands, like the truck wanted to veer toward him on its own. I gritted my teeth, flipped the high beams on, and laid on the horn. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. I swerved left, nearly went into the grass, my trailer fishtailing hard slamming so loud I couldn't hear the tires. When I looked in the mirror, expecting to see a body or at least a smear of red across the highway, there was nothing. Just empty road. Same as always. I pulled off at a rest stop 5 miles down and sat in the cab, hands shaking. I must have. Smoked 3 cigarettes back to back, watching the mirror like he might have followed me. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even close my eyes. Just sat there with the lights on until dawn. The next morning, I made some calls. Truckers talk, especially when something weird's going on. One guy, Joe Mullins, out of Amarillo, said he'd seen him 2 weeks back. Thought it was just a hallucination from lack of sleep. Another, this old boy named Collins, said he saw him standing not on the road, but off it, up on a hill near the overpass, watching. Said he thought it was a statue at first. Then he blinked. I started piecing together a map. Every sighting happened at night. Everyone within a stretch of about 20 miles near Abilene. Always between midnight and 4 a.m. Always a male figure. Always the passing lane. I talked to a state trooper who worked the second crash. He was shaken, though he didn't want to admit it. Said he'd been doing this job 15 years and had never seen anything like it. The impact didn't make sense. Neither did the lack of blood. The truck hit something, for sure. But it wasn't human. Or if it was, it didn't stay human after the hit. He said the weirdest part was the dash cam. The footage didn't show the man. You can hear the driver start to scream, and then nothing but a white blur, like static, like a smudge on the lens. For 2 full seconds, just blank whiteness, like the road disappeared. Then it's back to normal, except the truck's already crashed. It's like time skipped. That's when I stopped thinking this was just some ghost story. Last night, I went back. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. Something about that spot, it pulled at me, like unfinished business. I wanted answers. I needed to see him again. I left around 11:30. Took the same route, windows down, radio off. The sky was that kind of black you only get in West Texas, so dark it feels like you're falling into it. The road ahead shimmered in the heat left over from the day, even though it had dropped to 70 degrees dot, and then, around 12:47, there he was, standing dead still in the passing lane. Closer this time, I slowed to a crawl. No one else around. My headlights lit him up like a scarecrow caught in a spotlight, but he wasn't made of straw. His skin looked wrong, too smooth, like wax. His mouth was open just a little. No teeth, no tongue, just blackness inside. I rolled the window up and reached for my phone. It wouldn't turn on. Battery full earlier, now dead. My watch too, frozen at 12:47. He took a step, not toward me, just forward. Towards something I couldn't see. The air shifted. My ears popped like I'd driven into a tunnel. And then, in the space of a blink, he was gone. Not walked away. Not ran, gone. Like he'd never been there. My truck turned itself off. I swear to God, it just shut down. Lights, engine, everything. I sat there in the dark on a dead road with the air growing thick around me like I was underwater. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. Then the headlights came back on by themselves, and he was standing in front of the truck, right at the edge of the hood, inches away. No breath, no sound. I didn't see him move. I never saw him move, but he was there, watching me. He leaned forward slow like gravity didn't apply to him, and pressed his face against the glass, and whispered something. I didn't hear it with my ears. I heard it in my bones. It rattled around inside me like nails in a dryer. It wasn't English. It wasn't language. It was a command. Then he vanished. The truck roared back to life. Lights flared. Radio came on blaring static. I peeled out of there so fast I damn near rolled the rig. Didn't stop driving until I saw the Beaky's sign east of Temple. I don't know what he is. I don't know what he wants, but I can tell you this. He's not just a ghost. He's something older. Something tied to that stretch of road like a nail rusted into wood. And he's not just watching. He's choosing. Picking people. Marking them. I don't sleep anymore. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him standing there in the lane, that pale face pressed against glass. And I know one day soon, I'll be the one who doesn't swerve. I was somewhere outside Laredo, just past the 23rd mile marker. When I saw her, it was pushing midnight and I was running low on gas. I'd been driving cross-country from San Diego to Austin, moving back home after a busted engagement, and a layoff within the same cursed week. I'd planned to make it to Austin by dawn, but after Bakersfield, I just kept driving like I had something chasing me. Sleep-deprived, sweating despite the AC, chewing sunflower seeds to stay awake. That's the only reason I noticed her at all. The headlights picked her out from the side of the road like she'd been dropped there from the sky. She looked young. 18? 19 maybe. Couldn't have been older than 20. Long black hair plastered to her face, skin pale and gleaming with moisture like she'd come straight out of a storm. Except there hadn't been a drop of rain all day. Dry heat, bone dry. Even the dirt had that crisp sound when the tires rolled over it. But she was soaked, dripping, barefoot. Her dress clung to her like wet tissue paper, and her arms waved with this urgent, almost frantic motion. I passed her. Of course I passed her. Everyone does it first. You see something like that and your brain doesn't know what box to put it in. I watched her in my rearview mirror for as long as she stayed visible, getting smaller and smaller until the desert swallowed her. But something clawed at me, something deeper than guilt. It was that way she looked at the car as it passed. Not desperation, not relief. It was this cold recognition, like she already knew what I'd do, like she'd seen me coming 1,000 times before, and every single time I let her down, so I turned around, pulled a clumsy U-turn in the middle of that empty stretch of road and headed back, headlights sweeping across cactus and rusted barbed wire. And there she was again, still standing, still soaked, still waving. I pulled up beside her, and she didn't wait for an invitation. She opened the passenger door and slid in without a word, her wet dress dripping onto the seat. She didn't smell like anything. No mildew, no dirt, just nothing. That struck me as strange, but I was too tired to focus on it. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "You lost or something?" She didn't look at me, just stared ahead, hands clenched in her lap like she was trying to hold herself together. "My name's Daniel," I offered, trying to get something out of her. "Where you headed?" She spoke so softly I barely caught it. "Nowhere? Nowhere?" I repeated, laughing nervously. "Well, I can't take you nowhere. I'm headed to Austin, but I can drop you off wherever." She turned and looked at me then, eyes dark and bottomless like sinkholes. It's too late for that. There was something about the way she said it that made the hair on my neck stand up. Like she wasn't talking about getting a ride. Like she meant it was too late for me. I drove in silence after that, road humming under the tires. 10 minutes in, I glanced over and she was gone. I slammed the brakes so hard the car fishtailed into the shoulder. I got out hard hammering, calling into the dark like an idiot. "Hey, where'd you go?" No response. No footprints. Nothing. Just desert silence. I drove the rest of the way with the dome light on, watching the seat like it might suddenly fill with her again. Never did. Made it to Austin by 7 a.m., hands still shaking. I told myself it was exhaustion, a hallucination, my brain chewing on stress and caffeine and loneliness. But I couldn't let it go, so the next day, I went online, started digging into news articles, forums, old Reddit posts. And wouldn't you know it, I wasn't the only one. Every few months, like clockwork, someone posted about a barefoot girl on Highway 83 near Laredo. Always at night, always wet, always crying, and every time someone actually picked her up, They were never seen again. I found a post from a woman named Carla whose brother disappeared after calling her from the road, saying he'd picked up a girl who looked like she'd fallen in a lake. Another from a trucker who saw her but didn't stop, then watched her appear miles ahead a half hour later, waving again. There were reports of cars found abandoned by the roadside, drivers. Seats soaked like someone had poured a bucket of water on it. But no sign of struggle, no sign of the driver. Just a trail of wet, bare footprints leading off into the desert. And always they stopped abruptly, like the person had just been lifted off the ground. I found one post that really shook me, dated from 2006. A guy named Marco said he saw the girl, picked her up, and then she vanished from the seat like she had with me. He wrote the post the next day, terrified, asking if anyone else had seen her. And then nothing, no follow-ups, no login activity. A week later, someone commented on the post saying his body was found in the desert, no vehicle. Just Marco, naked. Eyes open, tongue gone. What messed with me most, though, was how the wet footprints led out into the desert, not back to the road. Like she'd led him somewhere. Somewhere you don't come back from. So I stayed up. For weeks. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't think straight. I kept dreaming of her face, soaked and pale, looking at me through the rearview mirror. Then 2 weeks ago, I passed through Laredo again. Business trip. I told myself I'd take a different route. I lied. It was midnight again. I slowed near the mile marker, and there she was, exactly the same, soaked, barefoot, crying. But this time, she wasn't waving. She was standing in the middle of the road. Just waiting. I braked hard, heart pounding in my throat. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at me with those black ocean eyes like she was so tired of doing this. I thought about going around her. I thought about calling someone. I even thought about backing up and getting the hell out of there. But then she smiled. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen. And I opened the door. I don't remember driving after that. The next thing I remember is walking barefoot across. The sand, water squelching in my shoes. The night air thick and wet like a drowned mouth breathing against my neck. I could hear her behind me. Not walking. Just this slow, wet dragging sound like something pulled through a river. I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn around. My body didn't belong to me anymore. I think I'm still walking. I don't know how I'm posting this. I don't know where I am. The phone says I've got 1 bar, but there's no signal, no GPS. Just static. My feet are soaked. There's no water anywhere, but I can see the footprints behind me, and they're still wet. I didn't see him when I pulled out of Houston, not at first. Highway 6 was quiet, save for the occasional 18-wheeler, barreling down the opposite lane or a sleepy sedan crawling under the weight of an exhausted family. I was heading north. To College Station, nothing special. Just a late-night drive back from visiting my sister. It was almost midnight when I turned onto that long, dark stretch of asphalt. The kind of road where the radio starts to fuzz and your headlights feel like they're barely cutting through the night. It was just me and the road. And the mirror. I always adjust my rear view a few times during long drives, checking it out. Of habit. Maybe looking for cop lights, maybe just trying to stay awake. But that night, when I looked up, I saw something I couldn't explain. Just for a second, a flicker. There was someone sitting in the back seat. It wasn't a face I could describe. More like the impression of a man, like someone left a fad, wet outline on black leather. Shadowy, still, and unmistakably there. No sound, no breath, just a presence. I blinked and he was gone. I told myself I was tired. I hadn't slept well at my sister's. Her kid's got that goddamn Fisher-Price xylophone and doesn't understand volume. So yeah, I figured I was seeing things. My mind playing tricks. but I still rolled down the windows and blasted the AC. Cold air helps keep the weird shit away. That's what my dad used to say. You can't fall asleep or see ghosts when your teeth are chattering. I passed through a few small towns, blink and you miss them kind. Navasota, Hempstead. Places that feel like time forgot them. Gas stations with peeling paint and ice machines that hum too loud. At one of them, I pulled in to top off. I wasn't low, but something about being on that road made me want to keep the tank full. Like I might need to run. The place was empty, except for the old guy behind the counter reading a paperback western. He didn't look up when I walked in. I grabbed a bottle of water and headed for the restroom. When I came out, he was standing by the window, squinting into the dark. You? Picking someone up? He asked, his voice sandpaper rough. No, I said, confused. Just heading back to College Station. He nodded slowly, still peering out. Thought I saw someone out by your car. You know a fellow wearing a white shirt carrying a bag? My stomach dropped. No, I said again, this time slower. I'm by myself. He didn't answer. Just kept looking out there like he expected to see something again. When I walked back to my car, I checked around it, hood, trunk, even under the frame. Nothing. But when I sat down, before I even put the key in the ignition, I looked up at the mirror. There he was again, closer this time. Like he was sitting in the middle seat now. Still no details, his face blurred, features indistinct, but I could tell he was smiling. Just barely. Not a friendly smile. A knowing one. Like he understood something I didn't. I turned on the dome light, spun around, and the back seat was empty. I didn't stop again after that. The night grew darker. Clouds swallowed the moon. My headlights were the only thing keeping the world from turning to ink. The road narrowed. Trees pressed in on either side like they were trying to strangle the highway. And that's when I saw him again. Not in the mirror this time. Not in the backseat. He was on the side of the road, thumbing a ride. His shirt was white, bright as chalk against the black pines. His duffel bag sat at his feet like it'd been there forever. I blew past him doing 70. Didn't slow, didn't swerve. But when I looked in the mirror, he wasn't there. No one disappears that fast. I should have seen him shrinking into the distance. Instead, the mirror was clean. Just road and trees. My pulse spiked. I started gripping the wheel tighter then. I meant to, 10 miles later. I glanced out my window and almost slammed on the brakes. He was there. Running alongside my car. I know what that sounds like. I do. I don't believe it either, but I saw him. Outside the driver's window, keeping pace with me, his feet not touching the ground. His face was pressed against the glass like a kid watching animals at the zoo. Still smiling, I sped up. 90. 95. My tires started humming, engine whining, the whole car rattling like it might come apart. He kept up for a few seconds more, then he wasn't there. I didn't sleep when I got home. Just sat in my apartment with all the lights on. The mirror on my hallway wall, the long one by the kitchen, I covered it with an old blanket. Every time I passed it, I felt like he was just a second away from looking back. That was 2 nights ago. Since then, he's been getting closer. I found his bag on my porch yesterday morning. Same one I saw by his feet that night. I didn't touch it. Just stared at it for a long time, then kicked it into the bushes. It was gone when I got home from work. Like someone had picked it up. I've been catching glimpses of him around town. In reflections, in car windows. Once I saw him standing across the street from my office building, still smiling. The kind of smile that makes you feel like your spine's full of ice water. I tried telling someone. My buddy Eric, he's illogical. Guy, a science teacher. I told him the whole story, left nothing out. He gave me that look, you know the one, where they're trying real hard not to call you crazy to your face. Probably sleep deprivation, he said. Microsleeps, hallucinations. Your brain trying to make sense of shadows and stress. He had an explanation for everything. I smiled, nodded, pretended to agree. Then I asked if he could give me a ride home. I didn't want to drive anymore. He did. And when we pulled into my apartment complex, I swear I saw something in the back of his car. I didn't say anything. I haven't been sleeping. I've got all the mirrors in my place covered now. I know that sounds dramatic, but I can't risk it. Not after last night. I woke up at 3:13 a.m., no reason. Just sat up in bed like my brain was on fire. The room was dark, silent, but I felt watched. You know that feeling when someone's standing behind you and your skin just knows? I looked around, trying not to move. I saw the faint outline of a man near the window. Just a silhouette, still, like a coat rack that hadn't been there before. Then the smile came, slow, wide, too wide. I blinked, but there was a single DMP footprint on my carpet, barefoot, facing the bed. I don't know what he wants. I don't know how he keeps finding me. He never talks, never moves when I look at him, but every time I see him, he's closer than before. I think, no, I know, he's trying to get inside something. My home, my mind, maybe my skin, and the worst part? I'm starting to smile back. I drive that stretch of highway near Bastrop more than I'd like. It's a long, ugly vein of cracked pavement slicing through East Texas scrubland, where pine forests press too close to the road and nothing feels quite settled. The trees loom, like they're eavesdropping. If you've ever driven it at night, you know what I mean. It's dark, pitch dark, and no matter how high you set your brights, the light doesn't seem to carry. You feel like you're pushing your way through something instead of gliding over it. The shadows eat your headlights, and the silence wraps around your car like wet cloth. And out there, somewhere between the gas station at 71 and the turnoff to a dried-up bait shack, there's that car seat. I first heard about it from a dispatcher named Mel when I stopped for gas late one night, hauling back from Houston after visiting my sister in the hospital. She'd had twins, tiny, pink, and screaming like sirens. Life felt too real that weekend. I had that humming exhaustion behind the eyes, the kind that blurs the lines between waking and dreaming. I stopped at the only open station just outside Bastrop. Fluorescent lights buzzed above cracked pavement, and the air smelled like rubber and something sour. Mel was sipping coffee behind the counter, the kind of old-timer who wore his badge even off-duty. Small talk led to ghost stories, and ghost stories led to local legends. That's when he mentioned the seat. "You seen it?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "Seen what?" "The baby car seat, left on the shoulder. Shows up from time to time, always the same spot. Just a little up past. Mile marker 232. Thing rocks by itself, even when there's no wind." I thought he was screwing with me. I laughed. He didn't. One couple stopped. This was 6 months back. Newlyweds, maybe mid-20s. He was driving. She saw it first. They pulled over to check. Never turned up again. Cops found the car with the doors wide open, engine still running, headlights shining on that seat like it was something holy. Only the seat remained. I remember rolling my eyes, but something about the way he said it stuck. Not dramatic, not spooky voice stuff. Just matter of fact. Like he was telling me the price of coffee. I asked him what he thought happened to them. Same thing that happens to everything that gets too close to that seat. That night, I couldn't shake the image. A baby seat, plastic pale and faded, sitting all alone in the dark. No baby. Just that gentle rocking, like something invisible was still holding it. Or worse, had just let go. I told myself it was just a story. something locals passed around to keep things interesting in a place where nothing happens. But weeks later, I found myself driving that stretch again. I didn't mean to look for it, but the idea had taken root like a splinter under the skin. I slowed down near 232 without even realizing it. The road was empty, just the deep black beyond the pines and the soft hiss of tires on asphalt. And then there it was, just off the shoulder, white plastic. Sun faded, stained, no car around, no people. Just the seat. It rocked. Just a little. Not back and forth like you'd expect. It had this circular motion, like a hand was gently nudging it around by the base. I didn't stop. God knows I didn't. I pressed harder on the gas and didn't look in the rear view until I hit the lights of Bastrop proper. When I did, my stomach nodded. The seat was still visible, far behind me, small and pale in the night. And I could have sworn it was facing the road now, like it had turned. I tried to laugh it off again, told myself it was wind, heat, hallucination, residual stress. I wanted to believe it, but then the couple's names started popping up again, Ethan and Mallory. Keen, friends of friends, people said. A cousin of my coworker had gone to school with Ethan. Photos circulated. Pretty couple. Big smiles. First home recently bought. Their car was found 20 feet ahead of the car seat. Driver's side door open. Their phones inside. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just gone. Every week after that, someone else claimed they saw the seat. It didn't appear every night. Just on moonless ones. Always in the same spot. Sometimes people reported hearing crying, but when they pulled over, there was nothing. Just the seat. Some said it was a trap. Others said it was a marker. Like something got buried under the road and couldn't rest. There was even a theory about a woman from the 1970s killed by her boyfriend when she tried to leave with her infant son. Supposedly, he pulled over on that very stretch and left them both for dead in a ditch. The baby seat was never recovered. I dug into that one. There was a record of a missing persons case, but no arrests, no body, no child, no seat, still people. Talk. Then came the video. A guy named Colin, amateur ghost hunter type, posted dashcam footage of him driving past the seat. He didn't stop. He just kept the camera rolling as he passed. He narrates the whole thing in that smug, self-deprecating way people do online. Jokes about ghost babies. But as he nears, you can see the seat start to shift. Not like it's caught in wind, but like it's reacting to him, tilting in his direction. The moment he passes, the seat stops rocking entirely. Just stops, frozen. A second later, a figure crosses the road behind his car, just a blur, like a smudge moving across. The lens. Everyone who saw the video said the same thing. It wasn't a person. The video was taken down within days. Colin stopped posting. Last I heard, he moved to Oklahoma and refuses to talk about Texas at all. I haven't driven that road since, but last night, my niece, one of the twins, started crying around 3 a.m. My sister called, panicked, exhausted. Said she saw something outside the nursery window. Said it was small, pale, rocking. When she turned on the porch light, there was nothing. But there was dirt on the windowsill and something faint, but they scratched into the glass. A single curved line. Like the arc of a cradle. I tried to sleep after that, but I couldn't, because I realized something I hadn't thought of before. The car seat rocks without wind, which means it's not responding to the environment. It's responding to you. And maybe, just maybe, it follows. It started with a phone call from my brother, Caleb. He drives long haul between Houston and Dallas, sometimes further west, depending on the company's load schedule. That night, he was shaken up more than I'd ever heard him before, and I'd known him to put in a 20-hour shift and hit a deer outside of Odessa without so much as a flinch. But this time, his voice was tight, breath clipped like he'd been holding it in for miles. "You got a second?" he asked. I could hear the engine humming behind him, wind rattling against the driver's side window like dry leaves on a storm. "Drain, always. What's up?" I hit something. "I think, maybe. I don't know. But it ain't right, man." This was late. Nearly 2 a.m. I was already in bed with the lights off, but I got up, turned on the lamp, and rubbed my face. The kind of thing that tells your brain this might take a while. "You call 911? "No," he said quickly. "There's nothing to call him about. There's no body. There's no blood. She was there and then she wasn't." "She?" Caleb took a shaky breath, the kind that told me he was fighting between sounding crazy and keeping whatever shred of logic he had left. "There was a woman," he said, "running alongside the truck. On the goddamn highway on I-45 just past. Madisonville. I was doing 60, 65, and she was keeping up. I laughed, I admit it. Couldn't help it." "You mean like a jogger?" "Maybe it was some cracked out fitness freak or something." "Don't laugh, Jace," he snapped. "Don't. You didn't see her." I quieted down, tried to listen. He was parked somewhere. He told me later it was a Love's truck stop near Centerville, but at the time, all I could hear was that low highway wind and his breathing. "Tell me." "She looked dead," he said. "That's the only way I can say it. Her skin was gray, but not like makeup or pale. Like concrete. Her hair was long, stringy, like she'd been in a lake. It whipped behind her like smoke." He paused. I heard a lighter flick, the crinkle of a Marlboro pack. She wasn't breathing hard. Her mouth wasn't open. Just this flat expression, dead eyes locked on me. She was running barefoot, Jace, on asphalt, at 60 miles an hour. "You get any video?" I checked the dash cam the second I stopped. "It caught her, man, clear as fuck. Just 15 seconds, but it's there. Then she vanishes. Vanished how?" "That's just it. She didn't duck off the road, didn't slow down, didn't hit the shoulder. She was there, keeping pace with me, and then she was gone. Like someone erased her." I sat down on the edge of the bed, cold sweat breaking along the back of my neck. "You think you hit her?" "No bump, no thud, no tires kicking up. And when I pulled over, nothing. Not even a shoe on the road. But Jace." He took a longer drag now. "I heard something hit the side of the trailer. Just before she vanished, like knuckles. He hung around that truck stop the rest of the night. Didn't sleep. I stayed on the line with him till near dawn, talking in circles, trying to make sense of it. We watched the dash cam together over a shared screen. He was right. She was there. It starts with headlights carving through the dark, the white stripes of I-45 flying by. Then, maybe 10 seconds in, there she is just at the edge of the passenger side mirror. Barefoot, gray, her hair slicked and streaking behind. Her like ribbons in water. No clothing I could describe, like it was all one color or soaked in something dark. Her face was off. That was the worst part. Not scared, not angry, just blank. Like a store mannequin running full tilt beside a semi. Then, with a flicker gone. Not like she slowed down or faded. Just not there anymore. The video cut to empty highway. Caleb's breathing got loud after that, both in the audio and through the phone. A few days passed. He took a few more loads. I kept the video on my laptop, showed it to a buddy of mine who used to work with TXDOT. He said the area just south of Madisonville had been a mess in the 80s wrecks. Disappearances, rumors. That stretch of road between Huntsville and Buffalo had always had a reputation, especially around nightfall. Something about the corridor. I brushed it off, figured. Every state's got its ghost stories. But Caleb wasn't done. Next haul down I-45, he saw her again. He didn't even call me. Just sent a voice memo. "She's following the truck," he said, whispering like he thought someone might be listening. "I can't see her in the mirror, but I feel her back. There. She's not running this time. I think she's on the trailer." I tried to calm him down, said maybe the wind or the truck's vibration was messing with his head. He didn't buy it. Neither did I, not after the second video. Same camera. Same stretch of road. This time, nothing outside the window. But there's a sound, metal tapping. Light, rhythmic. It gets faster. Then heavier. Like something slapping the outside of the trailer. At one point, the entire cab shudders. Caleb's voice can be heard. "What the fuck? What the fuck? What?" The F cut. Then static. Then it ends. The morning after, he drove straight to my place in Huntsville, refused to finish the haul. He looked worse than I've ever seen him, bloodshot eyes, hollow cheeks, like he hadn't slept in days. He parked the semi on the shoulder outside my house, came in without knocking, and sat down on my living room floor. She was on top. He said, "I saw her through the sunroof." Just a flash, but she was crawling, arms splayed, fingers hooked like claws. Hair dragging over the glass. She smiled that time. I didn't know what to say. I made him coffee, though he didn't touch it. We did a deep dive, spent hours looking into disappearances on I-45. Found out it's nicknamed the Texas Killing Fields. Apparently, there's a stretch south of League City where bodies turned up for decades, mostly women. Some of them never identified. A few of the reports match what Caleb saw. Pale, barefoot. One even mentioned the hair black and floating. One night, while we were digging through old case files online, Caleb said something I'll never forget. "She's looking for a ride." That was the last time he stayed at my place. He left the next day. Took a route west toward El Paso, trying to stay off I-45. I begged him not to drive alone anymore, but he wouldn't listen. Said he needed to face it, whatever it was. They found his rig a week later, abandoned off an exit near Corsicana. Engine running. Doors locked from the inside. No sign of Caleb, but there was a handprint on the windshield. From the inside, long fingers, thin as twigs. Pressed so hard into the glass it left a permanent smear. No blood, no body. Just that handprint. I still have the dashcam files. I still watch them sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. Pause on the frame where she runs alongside the truck. Her eyes seem to follow you if you stare long enough. Last month, I saw a news report. A different trucker. Same stretch of I-45. Claimed he hit someone, but there was no damage, no body. Just a smear of black hair. Caught in the trailer door. They all say the same thing. She was keeping pace. And then she vanished. I don't tell this story much. I mean, how do you explain something like this without sounding like you've got a couple screws rolling around in your skull? I've run through every rational explanation a dozen times, asked mechanics, cops, even a priest once, though I didn't really mean to, just sort of came out in a haze of late-night whiskey and shaking hands. But none of them could explain it. No one could. It happened about 7 years ago, somewhere between Fort Stockton and San Angelo, Texas. If you know that stretch, you know it's flat, open country. Nothing but oil pumps bobbing like thirsty. Birds and fences that go on forever. Night out there isn't like night in a city. It's thick and total. The kind of dark that seems to breathe, like it's alive and waiting just outside your headlights. I'd been driving for a long time. I was helping a friend move from El Paso to Austin. He'd flown out early for a new job, and I was doing him a favor, hauling the last of his stuff in his old beat-up Nissan Pathfinder. He paid me in cash a couple $100 and promised a bottle of good tequila when I got to his place. I'd left late, around 9 p.m., figuring I'd just knock out the drive in one long shot. I'd done it before, wasn't my first rodeo. I like driving at night anyway. Fewer cars, cooler air, and something about the long stretch of blacktop and radio chatter always settled me. About an hour past Fort Stockton, I noticed the headlights behind me. That wasn't weird in itself. There are always a few truckers. A random sedan, maybe some RVs out that late. But this was different. It was an SUV, big one. Looked like one of those old Chevy Suburbans from the 90s, but newer. The headlights were bright, too bright. LED bright. At first, I thought maybe the driver just forgot to dim their high beams. Happens. I flicked mine off and on real quick. Little signal, "Hey buddy, you're blinding me." They didn't respond. In fact, they flashed back. Not a regular flash, either 3 short bursts. Like a pattern. I remember thinking it was weird, but not necessarily creepy. Maybe they were trying to be polite in some dumb way. Maybe their lights were just messed up. So I kept driving. The SUV kept pace behind me. Never passed, never dropped back more than 50 or 60 yards. Just hung there, like a dog waiting to see what I'd do. I took an exit to refuel and hit a bathroom. Some little no-name gas station off Highway 190. That's where it got strange. I pulled in. The SUV didn't. It stayed on the highway, kept rolling like it was never following me in the first place. I stood there at the pump, watching it drift off until its lights melted into the black. Weird. Yeah, but maybe they were just going the same direction for a while. Not like it was impossible, but when I got back on the road, 5 minutes later, there it was again. Behind me. Same distance. Same blinding lights. I hadn't seen a turnoff or an intersection. No possible way for the SUV to be ahead in loop. Back, no U-turns. And I was only on the off-ramp for 3 minutes tops. That was the first time the unease started crawling under my skin. I turned the radio down. I adjusted my rearview mirror. I tried not to look at the lights, but they kept flashing. 3 quick bursts. Again. I took another exit. Didn't even care where it led. Some dirt county road lined with scrub and barbed wire. Drove a few minutes, enough to lose sight of the highway. Then I turned around and sat there for a minute with the engine off. Silence. Crickets. Distant yips of coyotes maybe. I waited. Nothing. I got back on the road. There it was again. It wasn't possible. No way they could have known where I'd pop back out. No way they could have predicted it. But there it was, right behind me like it had never left. I called my buddy. Told him I thought someone might be tailing me. He laughed it off, told me to stop smoking so much weed, even though I hadn't touched any that day. "You're just tired," he said. "Probably some asshole playing games." I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to, but it didn't explain how the SUV never passed, never lost me. Every time I exited, it vanished. Every time I re-entered the highway, it was already behind me. The lights never changed. Same pattern, 3 bursts, over and over. Sometimes 5-10 minutes apart. Sometimes every 30 seconds. At mile 247, I snapped. I pulled over on the shoulder and threw the truck into park. Got out. Slammed the door. I was ready to scream. At this guy, throw a rock at his windshield. Whatever it took. But the road behind me was empty. Totally. No SUV. No headlights. Nothing. I ran up the shoulder. Heart pounding, swearing I'd see taillights disappearing into the dark. But there wasn't even the hum of an engine. The silence was deafening. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Got back in the car, sweating. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. Drove another 10 miles in silence, watching. The rear view like my life depended on it. And then, there it was. 3 flashes. No car. No lights. Just the flashes. I swear to God, I don't know how to explain that. It was like the flashes were floating, suspended in the black, like reflections with no source. I didn't pull over again. I just drove, all the way into San Angelo. Didn't stop for gas, didn't blink. The lights followed me until I hit the city limits. Then, just gone. Vanished like fog in the sun. I reported it to the police. Not because I expected anything, but because I felt like I had to. The state trooper on duty was polite enough. Reviewed the dashcam footage from my friend's Pathfinder. Looked at my GPS logs. Then he frowned. "There's no car," he said. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're alone, the whole time." "There's no car following you." I asked to see it. He let me. Frame by frame, 80 miles of footage. Nothing but darkness. And asphalt behind me. Not one single pair of headlights, but I remember the light. I remember the shape. I remember those goddamn flashes. 3 short bursts. I stopped driving at night after that. Still can't make myself do it. There's something out there on those Texas highways. Something that can't be tracked, can't be seen unless it wants to be. Sometimes I still see it in my dreams. The flashes. The endless black road. The feeling that something's right there, just outside the reach of the mirror, and worst of all, sometimes I wonder if it ever really left. I was headed down Highway 77 just past dusk, somewhere between Waco and Marlin. It was one of those sticky Texas evenings in early September, when the sun doesn't quite want to go down and the air feels like it's pressing in on you from all sides. I'd spent the better part of the day fixing a busted water heater in Temple, and I was beat hands raw, shirt damp, and every muscle in my back threatening to revolt. All I wanted was to get home to my 2-bedroom rental in Lorena, crack open a cold shiner, and fall asleep to some old X-Files reruns. That's when I saw him. I didn't even notice at first, honestly. The radio was on low, some classic rock station out of Killeen, just background noise. I was zoning out, watching the yellow lines flicker under the headlights, when I caught a shape move along the shoulder. Just a twitch at the edge of the beams, low to the ground. At first I thought it was a dog, or maybe a deer that had been clipped and was dragging itself back into the brush. But then he raised his hand. It was a human hand, pale as chalk and glistening wet. My foot slammed the brake on reflex, and the truck skidded just a bit, gravel crunching under the tires as I pulled to a stop about 20 yards past him. The dome light flickered when I threw it into park, and for a second, I sat there, heart ticking a little faster than it should, trying to figure out what the hell I'd just seen. I grabbed the flashlight I kept in the glove box, got out, and pointed it back down the road. He was crawling, literally crawling out of the ditch, slow and shaky like a drunk newborn deer. Mud was streaked across his chest and arms. His shirt was shredded white, maybe, once, but soaked through with dark splotches I didn't want to think about. As I got closer, I saw his knees were scraped raw, leaving streaks behind him in the gravel like something being dragged. Shined the light up to his face, and there wasn't one dot, just dot skin. Smooth, stretched tight over bone like melted wax. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. A mess of blood and something worse dripping down over the blank canvas of his head. My throat clenched, but I didn't scream. I should have. I think most people would have. Instead, I just froze. Somewhere inside me, my brain started screaming, no, this isn't right. But I couldn't move, and then he spoke. I don't know how, I swear to God. I don't know how, but I heard it. A whisper, not in my ears, but somewhere behind them. Like my thoughts had been hijacked. "Take me home," he said, his hand gripped. My boot, weak and trembling. He looked up or aimed his faceless head up like he was begging. "Please, take me home." There's this thing your body does when it's too scared to run. Like your muscles lock down and all you can do is nod. because anything else would require decision-making, and decision-making might piss off whatever this thing is. That's what I did. I nodded. I helped him up, half dragging, half carrying him toward my truck. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think. I just opened the passenger side door, and he slid in without a sound. And as soon as I started driving, he whispered again, "Wrong way." I hadn't even told him where I was going. I turned down the music. The radio buzzed for a moment and then went dead, just static. No station, no signal. The cab felt colder than it had any right to, and the faint scent of antiseptic started. Leaking into the air, you know that hospital clean smell? Bleach and decay? It wasn't strong, but it was there. "Where's home?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer, just kept facing forward, shoulders shaking like he was crying, even though he had no eyes, no mouth, no goddamn face. "Is it Waco?" I tried again, wrong way. I swallowed hard, veered off onto a side road, Old Marlin Highway, the one that loops past some of those abandoned silos and derelict barns. Nothing but flat land and mesquites out there. But I figured, hell, maybe the guy meant he lived in one of those backwater places. Closer. He said, his voice, it was like it came from inside my bones, like it vibrated in my spine. I don't know how to explain it better than that. I kept driving. The road started to feel unfamiliar, even though I knew it like the back of my hand. The lights on the dashboard dimmed. The shadows outside seemed thicker. The moon disappeared behind clouds, and even the bugs had gone silent. No crickets, no cicadas. Just the soft hum of the engine and his rattled breathing. I glanced at him. The hospital bracelet on his wrist caught the glow from the dash. I leaned closer, tried to read it. There was no name. Just the word return in blocky black letters, and below it a string of numbers that made no sense. Like a date, but not quite 1739-52. "Wrong way," he said again. Louder this time. "Urgent. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Just tell me where." He turned his head toward me. I don't know how I knew it without eyes, without features, but he was looking into me. "You can't take me home," he whispered. I slammed on the brakes. The truck fishtailed, skidded to a stop, dust rising around us in a choking cloud. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't think. I turned to him. "What the hell do you want from me then?" He didn't answer. He was gone, just gone. Passenger door shut, seat empty. No blood, no mud, nothing. Like he'd never been there. The only sign was the faint imprint of his hand on my leg, where he'd grabbed me earlier, dark and wet and still warm. I sat there for a long time, long enough that the sun started to rise. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go home. I just drove around, aimless, stopping every few miles to check the ditches, like some part of me expected to see him again. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, it's happened 5 more times. Different places. Same man, same blank face, same blood, same hospital bracelet. Always asking to be taken home. Always saying wrong way, no matter where I go. I even tried bringing a priest once. Picked the guy up outside Hillsboro, drove straight to the nearest church. The priest didn't even make it inside. He dropped dead in the parking lot, eyes wide, lips blue. Coroner said it was a heart attack. I know better. I don't sleep anymore. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see that faceless head turning toward me, hear that whisper curling into my skull. It's not just in my dreams, it's in my ears now, when I'm awake, at work, in the shower. At the grocery store, he's not asking to go home anymore. He's telling me I'm going the wrong way. I haven't seen the sun in 3 days. I checked the weather, clear skies. But outside, it's just gray, flat and dead, like the sky's been drained of color. My neighbors are quiet now. Don't wave, don't talk. Their windows are black at night, even when the lights are on inside. Think I took something into my truck that doesn't belong in this world. Think I took someone home, and now don't know where I am anymore. The first time Kara saw the deer, she barely registered it. A twisted heap of fur and bones on the shoulder of Farm Road 1426, maybe half a mile outside of Larchwood. She was too focused on the sound her tires made on the cracked asphalt, too. Fixated on the straight, empty road unraveling through the scrubland. The dry grass flanking the roadside waved in the windless heat like it was breathing slow, shallow breaths. She figured the deer had been hit sometime in the early morning. It was bloated, legs sprawled unnaturally, one eye open and staring into nothing. A vague smear of dried blood trailed from its mouth to the yellow line. Something about it struck her, but she didn't know what. Maybe the size. It was huge, bigger than a normal whitetail. It looked swollen. Kara didn't slow down, just passed it on her right and kept going. She was heading west, trying to get out to Old Bramble Road before the sun dipped. The house she inherited, her aunt's. Old place, sat 10 miles past Larchwood on the kind of forgotten back road that only locals used. She hadn't been back to Texas in 13 years, not since she ran off to Boston with $200 and a fake ID. Now she was back because nobody else wanted the land. No one else wanted to walk into that house again, but she wasn't thinking about that yet, not consciously. Just driving, the late afternoon light flaring off the hood of her rented Subaru. A storm was brewing in the west. Big Texas thunderheads stacked like smoke above the mesquite. She glanced up once or twice, watching the flashes behind the clouds, but the lightning was far off. Still time. The second time she saw the deer, her stomach turned. She hadn't turned around, hadn't taken a wrong road. She just kept driving. Straight. She knew that. She knew. But the deer was there again, slumped in the same position, its mouth slightly agape. A black bird, maybe a grackle, perched on its rib cage, pecking once before fluttering away as she passed. Kara looked in the mirror. The deer lay still. Her mouth was dry. She slowed the car down, hand reaching instinctively toward her phone. In the cue folder, no signal, no bars, just the clock, 4:58 p.m., ticking forward 1 minute at a time. She took the next turn off the road she could find, veering south onto a narrower stretch of gravel, hoping to shake whatever weird loop she'd fallen into. The land flattened even more out here, with barbed wire fencing off brown fields, and telephone poles leaning at subtle, weary angles. A windmill spun lazily in the distance. She didn't recognize this road from the old maps, but that wasn't surprising. Some roads weren't on maps, especially out here. 10 minutes later, the deer showed up again, exactly the same place. Only this time, it blinked. Kara slammed the brakes. Gravel spat up behind her. The car skidded, stopped. She stared out the passenger window at the carcass. That eye, the open one, glassy and crusted, twitched, just once. Then again. She opened the car door, one foot stepping onto the road before something in her body screamed no. Her limbs
felt frozen, like they didn't belong to her anymore.
She sat back down and slammed the door shut, heart thumping behind her ribs. She kept driving by the fourth time. Dusk was bleeding into the landscape, and the deer was no longer alone. There were people standing near it now. At least, they looked like people. 5 of them, spread out like fence posts, thin and still. Too still. Their skin, if that's what it was, had the pale gray hue of dried ash. They didn't have faces, just vague impressions where eyes and mouths should be. All of them turned, slowly as she approached, as one. Their heads swiveled toward her like owls. Kara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She didn't breathe, She didn't blink. She passed them. They didn't move. Just watched. The sky went dark not long after, storm clouds boiling above her, but the rain never came. She tried turning around, tried driving back toward Larchwood, but the next bend in the road revealed the same deer again, the same people. They were closer this time, standing just inches from the edge of the pavement, unmoving, hands hanging limp at their sides. Kara screamed. It didn't matter. The scream disappeared into the thick, churning dark. Her headlights caught movement behind the deer, something larger. A shape in the field. It was hard to see. The thing crawled low, like a centipede or a man trying to stay hidden in tall grass. She couldn't make out a face, only a wet glint like slick fur and the dragging sound of something heavy being pulled through dirt. She gunned the engine. Tires peeled. She kept her eyes forward. It didn't help. No matter which road she took, paved or gravel, winding or straight, the loop always led her back. The deer, the watchers, the crawling thing behind them. By now, she had counted 8 rotations, 8 passes of the same goddamn spot. Each time, they got closer. By the 7th loop, one of the pale people had started reaching its arm out as she passed. Long, thin fingers grazed the air like it was trying to catch something. Or someone. The worst part? The deer was rotting backward. The first few loops, it looked like a regular carcass, bloated, stiff, decomposing in the sun. But now its body was healing. The gash on its flank had sealed. The blood trail faded. Its mouth had closed. On the 9th loop, it stood. Kara hit the brakes so hard she thought the engine would drop out. The deer was in the middle of the road, standing tall, legs long and spindly, too long. Its antlers were branching upward, but there was something wrong with them. Too many points, twisting in on themselves like coral. Its eyes were black, not deer eyes. Not animal eyes at all. The people were behind it again, watching, silent. Deer stepped forward. A shudder went through Kara like cold mercury. It wasn't just walking. It was remembering how to walk. Every movement was stiff, as if its bones were learning their own arrangement. She threw the car into reverse, spinning. The wheel flying backward until the rear of the vehicle fishtailed. Dust and pebbles filled the air. She turned, hit the gas, and shot down a new road. A faint hope fluttered in her chest. Maybe this was the one. Maybe she'd break through this time. When she saw the deer again, she didn't scream. It was already in the middle of the road, standing completely still, but there was something different now. Had her eyes. She knew them. Knew the shape of the lashes, the color, that amber rin she'd seen in the mirror her whole life. The deer blinked slowly. The watchers moved in behind it, stepping out of the brush and across the asphalt. Their limbs no longer hung loose, they moved with purpose. As if the game was over. As if it had all been a performance until now, she floored it. The deer didn't move. She braced herself. At the last second, it dissolved, not into blood and fur, but into static. A shimmer, like heat rising off pavement. The car passed through the shape of it. The engine hiccuped, sputtered. The dashboard went black. She drifted to a stop, dead silence. Even the insects were gone. She sat in the dark for what felt like an hour. No movement, no light. Just the weight of the thing sitting in the air, like a pressure pressing down on her skull. Then she heard the knock. Soft. Against the driver's side window, knock. K-N-O-C-K. Knock. 3 times. She turned. No one there, but when she looked forward again, she wasn't on the road anymore. She was in a house that smelled like mothballs and dust and something older. Underneath, the car was gone. Her hands were empty. She was standing in the entryway of her aunt's home, the one she hadn't stepped foot in since she was 17. The watchers stood in the kitchen doorway. The deer was behind them, and it Smile. Then everything went dark. Breaker 19, the voice said. Need help at mile marker 202. I was somewhere between Abilene and Odessa when it came through. Right around 3 in the morning, CB on low just for company. No music, just static and the occasional trucker chatter, guys griping about way stations or bitching about weather. I liked it that way, real voices in the dark, not corporate playlists or morning zoo garbage. Most nights, it was background noise. This night, though, something else broke through. That voice. It was flat and worn, a little distorted, like it was traveling a long way. Breaker 19, need help at mile marker 202. It didn't mean much at first. Calls like that happen. Could be a guy with a flat, someone spun out, ran out of gas. The highway takes its toll, especially out here where the land flattens into forever and the night eats everything. But then the channel went silent. No follow-up. No one else responding. I reached for the mic, thumbed the button. Come again? This is Wildcat. You need help, driver? Nothing. Just crackling static. Then the channel hissed back into quiet. I glanced at the dash clock. 3:04 a.m. I had another 100 miles to go before I planned to pull off and sleep. But the number stuck in my mind, mile 202. I wasn't far. Maybe 10 minutes out, and something about the voice. Not the words, not even the way he said them, just something. It felt off. Like hearing your own name whispered behind your ear. When no one's in the room, I leaned back in the seat, cracked the window a little to let the desert air in. It smelled like dust and truck grease and that hard, dry scent you only get in West Texas. A half moon hovered over the landscape, casting silver on everything. Empty fields, scrub brush, the occasional rusted-out fence line. 10 miles ticked. By slow, then I saw it signed for mile 202 flashing past. I slowed the rig, eased onto the shoulder, flashers on. No lights on the road ahead, no tail lights or hazard lights. Just me and the silence. I grabbed the flashlight from the console and stepped out. It was cold. Colder than it should have been in July. A breeze rolled across the plain, not strong, but constant. It made the weeds hiss and whisper in the dark. I stood there for a moment, scanning the shoulder and the field beyond. No broken down rigs. No cars. No people. Then, off to the right, maybe 20 yards out, I saw something in the brush. A glint of chrome. I started toward it. It was an old rig, or the ghost of one. That's the only way I can describe it now. A battered Kenworth, cab red and white, sides rusted like dried blood. One tire sunken into the dirt. The number on the side of the cab had been worn to almost nothing, but I could make out enough, 713. That number sat in my stomach. Lead? My uncle had driven a rig with that same cab number back in the day. Died in it too. I'd been 13 when it happened. He jackknifed off a turn outside Odessa, gone down a shallow ravine and hit a tree head on. Fire caught quick. They said he died on impact, but my dad, his younger brother, always said that was bullshit. Said the tape from the CB told a different story. He used to play it when he got drunk. A scratchy voice, warped and strange. Breaker 19. Need help at mile marker 202, same words. Same voice. That's what hit me, standing there in the dark. The voice on the CB. It was Uncle Ray. I don't remember walking back to the truck, but I found myself behind the wheel again, engine still idling, my hands ice cold. The voice came back, softer this time, like it was coming from the back of the sleeper. Breaker 19. I cut the engine and listened. Dead silence. Then, after a minute, the CB crackled back to life. Don't leave me here. That's when I pulled the mic and shut the whole damn thing off. Drove. Didn't look back. Made it to the next truck stop an hour later. Some rundown shell of a place just off the 20, near a town so small it barely existed on the map. I parked, locked the doors, sat in the cab trying to breathe. Another trucker pulled in beside me a little after 5 a.m., an older guy in a worn-out Peterbilt. He got out, stretched, came up to my window. "You all right, brother?" he asked. "You look like you saw the devil." I must have looked real bad because his face went kind of soft, concerned. I rolled down the window and told him what happened. When I said, "Mile marker 202, he flinched. "You heard him?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. He went on. "That ain't the first time, not even the 10th. Hell, I heard that call in '08, same words, same voice. Some say it goes back further. Fella died out there in '93. Caught fire after he ran off the road. You'll see the burn scar if you drive out there in daylight, maybe even some of the frame if the wind's been right." I asked him if he knew the driver's name. He looked at me, real slow, then said, "Ray Caswell." I wanted to throw up. He watched me a while, then shook his head like he was seeing something he wished he hadn't. Most don't stop. They hear it, but they keep going. You pulled over. You heard him. He's gonna know you now. I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't. Kept expecting to hear the CB spark back on even though it was disconnected. Kept looking over my shoulder. I even thought I saw someone in the mirror once, sitting in the passenger seat, face scorched and eyes melted to coal. But when I turned, there was no one there. Next day I had the radio removed. Not turned off, removed. Yanked the whole damn thing from the dash and threw it in a dumpster behind a diner in Midland. It didn't help. I still hear him sometimes. Not always on the road. Sometimes in the middle of the night when I'm in a motel room or parked under a dead streetlight in some forgotten town. A voice in the walls or in my head, I can't tell. Breaker 19. Once, I heard it through my phone speaker while scrolling YouTube. Another time, it came from my bathroom drain. I started carrying a burner phone, no apps, no connection. Just in case. Doesn't matter. You hear him, and he sticks. He's looking for someone to answer. Really answer, and if you speak back, he takes hold. Doesn't let go. I've heard stories since. Other truckers, late-night confessions at diners and lot corners. They all say the same thing. It's a wrong voice. It's not just dead, it's angry. Like he doesn't know he's gone, and he's blaming you for leaving him. I tried once to go back, thinking maybe I'd confront it, make peace somehow. I drove out to mile 202 in the daylight, just past 3 p.m. Nothing there but scorched earth. A blackened patch near a twisted guardrail. Parked, got out, stood there for a while. Then I heard an engine behind me, real low. Turned and there was nothing but the smell. That burning rubber, scorched metal, and something wet, like blood and heat. And then I heard it again. Not from the CB this time, but from inside me, from the back of my head, like someone whispering. Through bone, "Don't leave me here." I don't drive at night anymore. I avoid that stretch of road entirely. But I know it won't matter in the end. Ray's still out there calling, waiting, and someday someone's gonna answer back. Maybe. Maybe tonight. Mile marker 202. Listen close. I'd been driving down FM 1069 for over an hour, and not a single other car had passed me since I left the last gas station in Rockport. I was supposed to be in Corpus Christi by 10, but something about that damn detour sign outside Bayside threw everything off. Google Maps got turned around, cell signal dropped, and before I knew it, I was on this long, cracked strip of back road that stretched through scrubby brush, open cattle land, and the occasional fence made of sun-bleached wood and rusted barbed wire. Texas roads have this way of feeling like they go on forever, especially at night. The kind of night that presses in from every side, thick and still, like the whole world's holding its breath. There weren't any streetlights out there. Just the high beams of my old Dodge throwing a cone of white light over asphalt and mesquite. Trees. Every few minutes I'd pass a dead possum or a piece of blown-out tire. And once I swear I saw a coyote just standing on the shoulder, watching me. Eyes like hot coals in the dark. The radio was just static and I kept it on anyway. Sometimes I do that when I'm tired. Gives me something to keep my mind from drifting. I was running on fumes and caffeine, heading back after visiting my sister. In Beeville, we'd had another talk, the kind that leaves more silence than resolution. Family stuff. I wasn't in the mood to think about it, and FM 1069 wasn't doing me any favors. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a reflection. Maybe a roadside reflector caught the light funny, or maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But no, he was there, just up ahead, standing right in the middle of the road, holding something that glowed a soft yellow. A lantern. An actual old school, oil-burning lantern swaying gently in his hand. I slowed down, rolled to a stop maybe 20 yards away from him. My headlights lit him up from behind, but his face was mostly in shadow. He was tall, lean, wearing a kind of workman's jacket. And jeans. The lantern cast this golden ring around him, and I remember thinking it was weird how clear the air looked. No bugs, no dust, nothing. He raised his free hand and waved. Not a frantic wave, just casual, like he was hailing a cab. And then he started walking toward me. I cracked my window as he got closer, already getting ready to tell him no. I don't pick up hitchhikers, especially not in the middle of nowhere at midnight. But something about him kept me from speaking right away. He stepped into the edge of my high beams, and I got a better look. His face was normal, kind of weathered, like someone who worked outside a lot. Eyes pale, but he looked solid, real, not like the ghost stories people tell in bars. Mind giving me a lift? He asked, leaning in a little. His voice was calm, polite, maybe a little tired. I need to get out of here before it gets dark. I blinked. It's already dark, man. He smiled, slow and crooked. Not yet, but it will be soon. That should have been enough for me to drive off right there. But I didn't. There was something about the way he said it that made my scalp crawl. Like I'd missed something obvious, some bigger picture. And then I saw it just for a second when he shifted the lantern. No shadow. He was standing 5 feet from my headlights, and the lantern was bright enough to cast shadows off the mailbox posts behind him, but he had none. Not on the ground. Not behind him. Nothing. I stared, and he must have noticed. His smile widened, teeth like little tombstones. You got a long drive ahead, he said. You sure you want to do it alone? I don't know why, but I unlocked the door. He climbed in and shut it gently, setting the lantern between his feet on the floor. The cab filled with this warm, smoky smell, like old wood burning. Not unpleasant, just strange. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did he. We just kept going, the engine humming, the trees whipping by. You from around here? I asked. Finally, he turned his head toward me slowly, like he had to think about it. Been here a long time. How long? He looked out the window. Since before the roads, I laughed, but it came out dry. You mean like before cars? No, he said. Before roads. Before fences. Before the cattle. Before the barbed wire. There wasn't much I could say to that. The road stretched out in front of us, smooth and empty, and the miles ticked by, though my odometer didn't seem to be moving. I glanced at it a few times, but the numbers hadn't changed since we started. Still said 197,432.2. I checked the time next 12:17 a.m. It had been 12:17 since I picked him up. Where are you headed? I asked. He smiled again, but didn't look at me. Same place as you. You just don't know it yet. That's when the temperature started to drop. The heater was off and it had been muggy before, but now the air felt cold. Not just outside cold, deep cold, bone cold. Like standing in a meat locker. I reached for the controls, but they didn't respond. The buttons felt stuck, like they were part of the dash itself. What do you want from me? I asked. He didn't answer. We passed a sign, "Welcome to Bayside," but it looked old. Like it hadn't been painted in decades. The letters were peeling, and the town listed beneath it, population 333, was crossed out in red spray paint. Except Bayside should have been 50 miles behind me. My heart started thudding hard. I slowed the car, tried to turn around, but the Tigo road didn't end, just kept going forward. The trees were changing too. Taller now, thicker. Oak and pecan trees draped in moss, even though this part of Texas doesn't really grow moss like that. It looked wrong, out of place. Like we'd slipped into some other version of the world. You ever make a wrong turn, the man said, and don't realize it until it's way too late? I don't believe in this, I muttered. You're just screwing with me. He reached down and picked up the lantern. The flame inside flickered and flared, casting shadows all over the cab. Except still not him. No shadow. Not even a silhouette across the dash. I only waved down the ones already headed this way, he said. You chose this road. Not me. I slammed the brakes. We skidded, tires shrieking. The car stopped, but when I looked around, we were somewhere else, not Texas. Not anywhere I'd seen. Just black trees too tall, reaching in. The road cracked and broken, lined with bones. Actual bones. Some small like animal skeletons. Some big, human big. I tried to open the door. Locked. I hit it with my shoulder. Wouldn't budge. Let me out, I said. You're almost there, he whispered. Just a little farther. Then you'll see. The lantern's light was pulsing now, like a heartbeat. Faster. Brighter. The cab of the truck started to melt, or at least it looked like it was warping plastic and metal, bending in unnatural ways, like I was driving through heat waves, but worse, the world outside wasn't real anymore. Trees floating off the ground, sky churning like water, and I could hear something out there behind the trees. Clicking sounds, chittering, wet noises. I want to go back, I said, barely above a whisper. He looked at me with pale eyes full of pity. You can't go back. Nobody goes back. The last thing I remember is the lantern going out. I woke. Up in my truck, parked on the side of FM 1069, just outside of Rockport. Dawn was breaking, the sky pale and empty. The engine was off, keys still in the ignition. The fuel tank was full again, even though I remembered it was nearly empty. My phone showed 6:12 a.m. I had 5 missed calls from my sister. I drove straight to a gas station, stumbled inside like I'd just seen a murder. Asked the guy behind the counter if he'd ever heard of someone waving cars down on FM 1069 with a lantern. His face went pale. He looked at me for a long time before he said anything. You saw him too, huh? He told me about others, truckers, drifters, late-night drivers, all claiming the same thing, a man with a lantern, no shadow, asking for a ride before it gets dark. Nobody who picks him up ever comes back quite right. Some vanish. Some come back days later, confused, bleeding, or raving. Others like me just wake up, but they always remember the cold, the road that doesn't end, and the sound of things moving in the trees. I don't drive at night anymore, especially not alone, and never on FM 1069 because I think I didn't. Come back alone. There's something in my rearview sometimes. Just for a second, a flicker of gold light and no shadow behind it. picked her up just outside of Kerrville on Highway 16. Late in the afternoon when the sky was hung low with that strange yellow-gray light you only get before a storm. I just gassed up at a little Exxon with dusty windows and a clerk who looked like he hadn't blinked since 1994. I was heading to Houston, about a 4-hour drive if traffic didn't bite me in the ass around Katy. No real reason for the trip, just needed to get out of town. Sometimes the air in small towns starts to feel too thick, like there's something rotten just out of sight and you're the only one who can smell it. She was standing by the side of the road, right hand raised, thumb out, the other hand holding a small leather purse against her hip. Looked like something out of an old movie, like she'd stepped straight out of 1975. Long hair the color of honey left loose to fall around. Her shoulders, a pale green dress that clung to her hips in the Pipsim-the-Fow breeze, and sandals strapped tight like she'd walked a long way already. I don't usually stop for hitchhikers. Not these days, not with everything you hear, but she looked so damn harmless, almost fragile. When I slowed the truck and rolled down the window, she leaned in with that smile. Sweet, easy, but odd. Like she was smiling with her teeth and her lips and her eyes, but not her brain. Going to Houston, she said, voice light and unhurried. Think you could give me a lift? I nodded. Yeah, got room? She opened the door and slid in. No luggage except that little purse. She smelled like seaweed and lemon, but faint, like the scent had followed her from far away and was fading now. I tried not to stare as she buckled herself in. She didn't thank me. Just rested her hands on her knees and looked out the windshield. Like she'd been doing this all day. We got back on the road. The wind had picked up, carrying dust and heat in through the vents. We rode in silence for a while. The only sounds were the tires humming against the road and the occasional creak from the dash. Name's Greg, I said, eventually. She didn't look at me, just kept watching the road ahead. I know, she said. That made me stiffen, just a little. How? You look like a Greg, she said with a shrug. Not a Tony or a Mark. Definitely not a Robert. Greg suits you. She smiled again, and for a second I didn't like the way her lips curled. Too slow, too deliberate. Like she was practicing how to be human. I laughed it off. Chalked it up to road jitters and too much caffeine. What about you? I asked. What's your name? Does it matter? She said, not unkindly. I won't be around that long. We passed a field full of cows all, standing the same way, facing the same direction, like something had frightened them. She leaned her forehead against the window, eyes half lidded. I figured she was tired. People doze on long rides. But then I noticed her breathing slow, too. Slow. Not like sleep, more like she was conserving something. Holding on. Her skin had gone waxy, with a faint sheen like condensation on glass. She didn't blink for whole minutes at a time. We passed through Bandera, then Medina. She didn't speak. Again, I had the radio on low, old country tunes fading in and out, static lacing every song like a whisper. At some point I started smelling salt. Not sweat, not metal salt. Ocean salt. Like the Gulf. And it got stronger the closer we got to San Antonio. I kept glancing at her, trying not to be obvious. Her dress was darkening, slowly. The green. Fabric clung weightily to her thighs and stomach like she'd been swimming. I finally said, "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Just leaking." "Leaking?" She turned her head and looked at me, and I swear her eyes weren't the same as before. No whites, just gray-blue all the way across, like those blind fish you find in caves. Her smile was back, stretched tighter than ever. "I always leak before I leave," she said. I laughed again, nervous. "You leave? Where? You from the coast?" "No," she said, and that was it. The seat under her was wet. I mean soaked, like someone had spilled a gallon of seawater. I thought maybe she had some kind of condition or had an accident, but the water smelled like brine, heavy, like old nets and dead fish in storms. I turned off the AC and rolled the windows down a crack, but the smell didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. My throat started to itch. We hit the edge of San Antonio just as the sun dropped low. I could feel her watching me, even though I didn't look directly. I caught her reflection in the side mirror, hair dripping now, strands plastered to her cheeks. Her skin looked bloated, pale and rubbery. Her fingers, God, I didn't notice until then her fingers were swollen and wrinkled like she'd been submerged for hours, and the water kept coming. Not fast, but steady, like she was being wrung out from the inside. "Pull over," she said suddenly. I did, more out of instinct than obedience. There was a rest stop just outside Seguin, near a line of trees that had turned black in the twilight. She opened the door, stepped out slowly, and stood there dripping. Not shaking, not even cold. "You should keep driving," she said without turning back. "I can find the rest of the way." I wanted to argue, to ask what the hell was happening, but my mouth went dry. She looked worse now, like something had gone soft inside her, like her bones weren't holding her upright. Her arms hung too long, her neck bent like seaweed in a current. She walked toward the trees, slow and dragging, and I sat there like a statue. I watched her until she disappeared between the trunks. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. Then I got out and checked the passenger seat. Still wet. Absolutely soaked. I touched it stupid. I know, and my fingers came away slick with water that stung the cuts on my knuckles like salt poured into wounds. It wasn't just water. It was something else. Something old. I drove the rest of the way to Houston without stopping. I kept thinking about what she said. I always leak before I leave. What the hell does that mean? I had the seat cleaned the next day, but it didn't help. The smell stuck. And it wasn't just the seat. The whole cab felt different, heavier, like the air had thickened. The radio hasn't worked right since. Just static and garbled voices when I try to tune anything in. Sometimes I hear her name whispered in the fuzz. I still don't know what it is, but I know when I hear it. It hits something inside me like a tuning fork, and the water keeps coming back. I've replaced the seat twice. Scrubbed it, covered it with tarps. Doesn't matter. Every morning since that night, there's a wet spot in the exact same shape. Passenger side. Always briny. Always cold. Like she's still sitting there. Or like she never left. I've seen her since then. Once in a diner in Baytown, standing behind the counter, dripping, smiling. No one else noticed. Another time near Galveston, walking along the shore, feet not sinking into the sand, leaving no prints behind. I don't know what she is. I don't want to know. But I know this much. If you're ever driving down Highway 16, and you see a woman with honey-colored hair in a pale green dress, standing alone with her thumb out, don't stop. No matter how sweet she smiles. No matter where she says she's going. I saw it first on a Wednesday night, just after 2 a.m., while driving home from a graveyard shift at the hospital in San Angelo, the kind of shift that leaves your bones vibrating and your brain floating half a foot outside your skull. I was too wired to be sleepy and too tired to be sane. Highway 67 was empty, a black ribbon stretching endlessly ahead. The occasional flick of a reflector post marking time like a heartbeat. There weren't any other cars, not until I saw the light. Except, it wasn't a light, not really. It was the absence of one. A motorcycle weaving through the dark like a ghost through fog, hugging the curves of the road with too much grace, too much confidence. No headlight, no taillight, no glow of dashboard instruments. And no goddamn rider. At first, I thought I was hallucinating that maybe I'd finally crossed some threshold from exhaustion to psychosis. But as it passed me fast, silent, riding maybe 3 feet off my driver's side, I heard something. I wasn't prepared for laughter, not the kind of laughter you want to hear in the middle of the night on a West Texas highway. It wasn't joyful or even mocking. It was thick and breathless, like someone choking on their own amusement. It echoed inside the cab of my truck even after the bike was gone. Swallowed by the curve ahead and the yawning dark beyond, I pulled over. My hands were shaking too much to keep driving, and I needed to convince myself I hadn't seen what I'd just seen. But there were no taillights disappearing into the distance. Nothing. Just the sound of the wind and the distant, rhythmic ticking of my cooling engine. That should have been the end of it. A sleep-deprived hallucination, easily dismissed and forgotten. But the next night I heard a patient talking about it. Old guy named Frankie Villarreal. He'd come in after a fall, probably drunk, maybe concussed, and while I was stitching. Up the gash above his eyebrow, he looked at me with eyes too clear to belong to a drunk and asked, "You seen it too?" I froze. "Seen what?" "The bike," he whispered. "No headlight. No rider. You hear the laughing?" He smiled like it was a joke, like he was trying to make it into one. But there was sweat on his lip and a tremor in his hands that said, "Otherwise, they say it started after the crash on Loop 306, he went on. Couple years back. Teenager and his girlfriend got run off the road by a semi. Nobody stopped to help them. Cops found the boy's body in the ditch 2 days later. Girl was just gone. Like the wind picked her up. Bike was twisted metal. Engine still warm. I tried to laugh it off. You're telling me the kid's ghost is joyriding through the hill country? But Frankie wasn't laughing anymore. It ain't him ridden that bike. That's the thing. It's her. She never had a face after the wreck, they said. Just a mess of reddened teeth. They only knew it was her from the necklace they found. Bike keeps going back to where it crashed. Loops around the towns, laughing, looking for someone. I didn't. Believe it, not really, but I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up thinking I heard tires screeching, distant laughter bleeding through the walls of my apartment. At one point I got up, checked the parking lot, convinced I'd hear a revving engine or see some tricked-out Honda pulling a prank. But there was nothing. Always nothing. 3 days later, I drove out to the crash site. The highway was straight in that section, 2 lanes cutting through a patch of mesquite and dry caliche. You could see the ghost of tire marks on the shoulder if you looked hard. No crosses, no flowers. Nothing to mark what had happened there. I parked and got out, listening to the wind shuffle through the brush. It was hot, but the air felt wrong, too heavy. Like it was holding its breath. I stood on the shoulder and waited. Nothing happened. Not right away, but I swear, the longer I stood there, the more the world started to go quiet. No cars passed. The wind died. Even the bugs went silent. That kind of silence doesn't feel natural. It presses on your ears like water. You start to hear your own heartbeat, your own breath, and eventually, if you're really unlucky, you start to hear something else. Laughter. It was faint at first. Behind me, coming down the highway. My spine turned to ice, and I wanted to look, but something in me said don't. It was getting closer. Still no engine noise. Just that sound rasping, broken, joyless laughter. Like something had cracked. Open and was leaking madness into the air. Then it passed me. Fast as before. Just a black blur hugging the road. No rider. No license plate. No goddamn headlight. But this time, I saw something. Just for a second, in the corner of my eye, 2 hands. Were pale and claw-tight around the handlebars, tendons stretched like wires. And they weren't human. They were burned, melted. Fingers fused in places, blackened tips. The kind of damage you see in an autopsy photo, not something that belongs to the living. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not even Frankie, but I started hearing more stories. A cop who saw it near Cristobal and swerved into a ditch said the bike passed through his cruiser. Through it. A trucker who jackknifed his rig trying to avoid a phantom rider on 277. Survivors who described the same thing. The laughter. The black bike with no light. And always no one riding it. Some said the girl still hadn't realized she was dead, that she was reliving the night over and over, looking for help, for someone to stop. Others said she knew, and she was punishing those who didn't stop back then. That if you ignored her, like the others did, she'd follow you home. Didn't believe that part. Not until the calls started. At first, it was nothing, just static. Then the laughter. That same broken, high-pitched sound coming through the speaker of my phone even when it was turned off. I changed numbers. Changed phones. Didn't matter. Then came the smell. It was subtle at first, like hot metal and roadkill, but stronger. Every night, I started sleeping with the lights on. Moved into a different apartment. But wherever I went, the smell came with me. The sound came with me. Every night, just after 2, I'd hear tires on gravel, a low rasp like a chain being dragged down the hallway. Always just outside. Never inside. Until last week. I don't know why I opened the door. Maybe I was tired of being afraid. Maybe I was just curious. There was nothing there, just darkness. The hallway empty, but the smell. God, it hit me like a wave. Gasoline and charred meat and something sour underneath. I turned to go back inside, and that's when I heard it. The engine. No build-up, no slow start, just full throttle. Deafening, like it was inside the walls. I turned again, and it was there. At the end of the hall, a motorcycle, black as oil, no light, no rider, except this time it was inside. I saw the front wheel twitch like a dog sniffing the air, and then it started toward me, slow and deliberate. The laughter filled the air like smoke. I slammed the door and backed into the bathroom. Stayed there until sunrise. I moved out that morning. I don't sleep anymore. I drive during the day. I stick to crowds. But I can feel it getting closer again. A few nights ago, I woke up to the smell. And when I looked at my phone, it was playing. A video. I don't have any saved. It was me, sleeping. And over my shoulder, just behind the bed, something moved. Just a flicker. 2 pale hands gripping the frame of my window, pulling something up and in. I haven't watched it again. I think I was supposed to stop that night, at the crash site. I think maybe the only way to end it is to help her. But what does that even mean? All I know is, if you're driving past Loop 306 and you see a bike with no headlight, get the hell off the road. Don't look at it. Don't try to outrun it. And for the love of God, don't laugh. It started with a long day and a longer stretch of road. Cassandra Hartley left her office in San Antonio around 6:45 p.m., already exhausted from back-to-back meetings and one of those fake birthday celebrations in the break room where they cut a Kroger cake with a plastic knife and sing with zero enthusiasm. Her head was pounding, and all she wanted was to get back to her house outside New Braunfels, take a hot bath, pour herself 2 fingers of Jack, and binge whatever Netflix recommended without thinking too hard. That's the kind of night she was looking forward to, but about 15 miles out, on a near-empty stretch of FM 306, she noticed the truck. It had come out of nowhere, or maybe she just zoned out. 1 minute the road behind her was dark and empty. The next, she checked her rear view and saw a pair of blinding high beams. Big ones, too high off the ground to be a sedan. Probably a lifted F-250 or Silverado, the kind with smoked-out headlights. And decals on the back glass. She squinted, flipped the mirror to night mode, and tried to ignore it. That was easy at first. People tailgate all the time in Texas, especially out here where it's open road and they think they're invincible. Behind the wheel, but this guy, he was close. Every time she changed lanes, he did too. Slowed down when she did, sped up if she tried to make distance. After a few miles of that, her nerves started twitching. It didn't feel like casual road rage anymore. This guy was watching her, reacting in real time. And the weirdest part was, he never tried to pass. Not once. Just stayed tucked tight behind her bumper like he was riding a tow hitch. At one point, she pulled off to the shoulder just to see what he'd do. Maybe she could let him go around, let this weird energy pass her by. But the second she hit her blinker, he did too. Slid to a stop maybe 30 feet back, not quite close enough to threaten, but close enough to make it very clear he wasn't going anywhere unless she did. Cassandra sat there for a good minute, gripping the wheel, her fingers going clammy. No other cars passed. The silence of that two-lane road was absolute, broken only by the low idle of her engine and the barely audible purr of his in the distance. Then she hit the gas. The tires kicked gravel as she jerked back onto the road. Heart thudding now. She kept glancing at the mirror. Sure enough, the truck followed like it was tied to her with a chain. Something was wrong. She tried to remember the plate number, but every time she got a good look, the guy flashed his brights just once. Quick and surgical, like he knew she was trying to read it. A kind of warning. After the third time, she stopped trying. By the time she turned onto the smaller county road leading to her house, a winding path of cedar and barbed wire fencing that curved through scrubland and past old hunting leases. He was still behind her, still matching her move for move. No headlights coming from the opposite direction. No signs of life except her and the hulking silhouette looming behind. That's when the dread kicked in full force. Her house was at the very end of the road, a gravel driveway that wound up a hill and dead-ended at her gate. She hadn't seen another person for over 20 minutes. If she drove home, she'd be taking this thing right to her front door. But if she didn't go home, where would she go? There were no gas stations, no rest stops. Just ranches and fields and woods, and the kind of loneliness that made your bones feel hollow. So she did the one thing she promised herself she wouldn't. She drove all the way home, pulled into the gravel turnoff, the gate creaking open from the keypad like it always did, her tires crunching across the pale rock. Her porch light flicked on automatically. Security floodlights lit up the front of the house, soft yellow against the growing dark. She parked and turned off the engine, not quite ready to get out. She thought maybe he'd just keep driving past. Maybe the sight of a house and cameras and light would make him think twice. But the truck didn't pass. It turned in, stopped right at the base of her driveway, just beyond the gate. Didn't pull in, didn't back away. Just sat there. Engine idling. Headlights off. Her stomach twisted. She stared through the slats of the gate, eyes dry, heart hammering. She couldn't see the cab clearly. The windshield reflected just enough porch light to obscure the driver's side. But the shape of the truck, matte black, lifted, enormous. It was the same. Minutes passed. 5, then 10, then 20. He never moved. She thought about calling the police. Thought about going outside and yelling something. What exactly? She didn't know. But the thing that stopped her wasn't fear of confrontation. It was the sense that if she acknowledged this thing, it would become real in a way she couldn't undo. That silence and distance were the only thread of safety left between them. So she waited. Watched it. Waited. Nearly 2 hours went by. 2 full hours. The sun was gone, and the sky had taken on that moonless, rural blackness where the horizon vanishes. The truck still idled quietly, never shifting, never honking or flashing its lights. Then it started to move, but not forward. It began backing up. Slowly, steadily, wheels rolling in reverse like it was being pulled away by something invisible. She leaned forward, squinting, and felt a chill slide across her arms. There was fog. Where had that fog come from? Not morning mist, not a low-lying haze. This was thick, rolling, almost theatrical, like dry ice had poured out of the tree line behind the truck and started crawling over the road. In July, in Texas. That doesn't happen. She would have laughed if her throat wasn't so tight. Truck reversed into it without turning around, taillights glowing red, shrinking. Then, gone. Just like that. Swallowed. Cassandra sat still another half hour before she moved. Locked every door, shut every window, drew the curtains. She didn't sleep that night, not really. Just lay under the comforter with a kitchen knife on the knit stand, listening for anything that might come up the gravel again. Morning came, clear and blue. No fog, no tire tracks either, none where the truck had been, none in the road outside. Her gait, just her own. She told herself maybe she'd imagined parts of it. Maybe it was a trick of the night. Some asshole playing a joke. Maybe someone mistook her for someone else. But that was 3 weeks ago. And every night since, at exactly 9:42 p.m., she hears a low engine rumble somewhere past the tree line. Not close. Just there. Sometimes it fades. Sometimes it lingers. But it's always the same sound. That same idle. She's tried leaving the porch light off. Tried staying with friends. Even left town for a weekend. But when she came back, it was waiting again. Right at the gate. Engine humming. Fog rolling. I saw the old man off Highway 77, just north of Corpus Christi, where the pines start to thin and the land dips into flat fields and brush country. It was July, already dark by 8:30, and the humidity stuck to my skin like a second shirt. I had the windows down and the radio on low, some classic rock crackling in and out through the static. My job had sent me down from Houston to look at a busted water line in Kingsville, and I was just trying to make it back before midnight. I'd taken the scenic, rude old habit from when I used to drive these roads with my dad years ago. I didn't see the old man at first, not until my headlights caught the glint of his sign. He'd propped it against an old Coleman cooler, handwritten in fat black marker on warped plywood. Emma P.S. Safeway through $5. I slowed without thinking, not out of interest so much as confusion. Who sells maps on the side of a Texas highway in the middle of summer, especially now when phones have every damn road mapped down to the blade of grass? He stood there beside a faded red pickup, hood popped, steam curling up into the thick night air. He didn't wave, didn't holler, just looked at me, his eyes reflecting a weird amber in the beams. I pulled onto the shoulder. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the part of me that still believed in the old ways, back before GPS and Google. When road atlases came with warnings not to take certain back roads after dark. He walked over slow, limping a bit. He looked ancient, the way pecan trees look, ancient, weathered and sun-dried, skin like crumpled paper. He wore a wide straw hat and a denim shirt buttoned up to the neck despite the heat. His boots were so worn they'd almost folded in on themselves. He held a rolled-up map in one hand, a rusted thermos in the other. "You lost?" he asked, voice cracked like dry dirt. No accent I could place, but it had weight to it, like it came from deeper down than his throat. "No, sir." "Just saw your sign. You really selling maps?" "I am. You need one." I smiled politely, shook my head. "I got a phone." "Appreciate it, though." His face didn't change. He just nodded like he'd expected it, then added, "Phone won't help. Not tonight." I hesitated. "Why's that?" He looked out over the highway, eyes narrowing toward the east, where the brush stretched off into low hills and mesquite. "Storm's coming. not the kind that shows up on radar. Roads'll be wrong soon. Signs'll flip. Bridges'll twist. Like driftwood, Jeeps'll lie to you. She always does when the curtain thins. I tried not to smirk, but I guess it showed. He didn't seem offended. "Take a map," he said, holding it out to me. $5. It'll show the way that stays. I shifted in my seat. The air felt heavier all of a sudden, like the barometric pressure had dropped 10 points. I looked up and saw nothing but stars, clear sky from horizon to horizon. Not a hint of a cloud. I took the map, mostly just to end the conversation. Pulled. I crumpled 5 from my glove box and handed it to him. He nodded, didn't smile, just handed me the rolled parchment and walked back to his truck without another word. I watched him go, trying to shake the weird taste the whole thing had left in my mouth. His truck wasn't steaming anymore. I pulled away, map tossed on the passenger seat, and tried to forget about him. But the road changed, not all at once, subtle at first. A missing mile marker here, a detour that didn't show up on the map. I turned onto Farm Road 2441 like I'd planned, but it felt longer than usual. There weren't any cars, none, not even in the opposite lane. And the fences lining the fields were twisted, as if they'd been melted and refrozen in some wrong shape. I turned the radio off. There was a low hum under the silence, like wind in a tin silo, except there was no wind. The trees were still. The moon, when it came up, was too big and too red. Like something watching Dot at some point, I picked up the map and unrolled it. It wasn't paper like I expected, but a thick yellowed parchment, hand-drawn in deep brown ink. It showed roads that didn't exist on my phone. Dirt trails, unnamed lanes, odd symbols marking corners and creek beds. There was a line drawn in red that curved away from the highway and wound through backwoods. Above it, in the corner, someone had scrawled in jagged block letters, "The Stay Put Path. Follow only this." I should have tossed it. But something in me said keep driving. I turned off the main road and onto the red path. The truck rattled over gravel, the headlights catching the flash of barbed wire and pale rocks. There were no houses, no mailboxes, just brush and the creeping sense of being watched. I drove like that for nearly an hour, maybe more. Time didn't move right. The moon rose but never shifted. My phone said it was still 10:12 p.m. Even though I swore I'd left the old man by 9:30 dot at one point, I passed a car, or what was left of one. It was crumpled into a live oak, all 4 tires melted into the ground, like it had been dropped from a height. No fire, no blood, just collapsed metal and something on the windshield in black marker. Wrong turn. He didn't stop. The map never steered me wrong, but the things I passed. God, figures in the brush, eyes too wide, faces too pale. A child standing alone in the middle of a dry creek bed, holding a lantern that didn't give off light. Something crawling in the trees with too many limbs. I locked my doors as if that would help. Finally, the path led me back to the main road highway. 77 again, except now I was nearly at the outskirts of Victoria. My phone flickered back to life. Time read 1:41 a.m. I had no memory of that much time passing. I got to my motel and locked every window and door. Map folded up and shoved deep in the mini fridge like cold would kill whatever weirdness was still. Clinging to it. Next morning, I checked the news. 3 accidents along Highway 77 overnight. All between Corpus and Kingsville, all at different spots. Single-car collisions, bodies thrown like dolls. No signs of braking. No phone signals reported past 10 p.m. All of them had been seen earlier that day refusing to stop for the old man. That's how they wrote it in the report. Witnesses stated the drivers did not stop for an elderly man attempting to flag them down. They made it sound like coincidence. I kept the map. I keep it in my glove box just in case. I've never used it again, but I never drive that stretch of road without knowing it's there. Sometimes I dream about it, paths shifting, roads curving in on themselves, the moon too close. A few months later, I tried to go back. Thought I'd find the old man, thank him maybe, or ask what the hell that was. But there was no sign, no truck, no cooler. Just heat waves and silence. They say Texas is big, big enough to hide things. Whole towns, whole worlds maybe. And sometimes the safe way through isn't something you find on a GPS. It's something older, something you pay for in cash. And trust, you don't get a second chance if you say no. I first heard about the fog from a trucker named Andy Griggs at a diner outside Fobbins, east of El Paso. This was in February cold by Texas standards, and the sky had that dead gray look like someone had scraped the blue clean off. I was halfway through a chicken fried steak that tasted more like fried gristle when Andy leaned over from the next booth and said, real casual like, "You drive out by Route 20 last night?" I shook my head. Nah, stayed in town. Why? He sipped his coffee, which looked more like motor oil than anything brewed for human consumption. Don't. There's something out there. Something in the fog. I laughed because what the hell else are you supposed to do when a stranger starts talking like that? But he didn't laugh back. Just stared at me, his eyes red-rimmed and sunken like he hadn't slept for a week. I'm serious, he said. I saw a car go into it, just disappear, like a curtain swallowed it. And then the horn started, still blaring when I pulled away. Don't know how I made myself move the rig. Didn't feel like I was behind the wheel anymore. Like something else was pushing it. Now I'm not the type to buy into ghost stories. Been in Texas my whole life, and there's always some old coot with a tale to tell crying women near rivers, glowing eyes in mesquite thickets, hitchhikers that vanish when you look away. But something about Andy's voice stuck with me. Not just the fear, but the conviction. That man believed what he saw. I didn't sleep much that night. Found myself scrolling through local news, looking for anything about Route 20. There wasn't much, just a blip about a missing person out near Tornillo. A car had been found idling on the shoulder. No driver, no sign of struggle. The horn had drained the battery. Next morning, I filled up my old Silverado, grabbed 2 thermoses of coffee, and made for Route 20. I didn't know what I expected to find. Probably nothing. Maybe I just needed to prove Andy wrong to shake the feeling that something had crawled into the back of my brain and nested there. I got there just before noon. Sun was high, but the clouds were thick, the kind that don't move, like someone pressed pause on the weather. The desert stretched out in all directions, scrub brush, cacti, and brittle fence posts sagging like tired old men. And then I saw it, just past mile marker 323, a wall of fog. Not rolling in from the distance like it should, just there. Like it had been dropped into place. It wasn't white either. It had a yellowish tinge to it, like old nicotine stains on wallpaper. It clung low to the ground, no more than 15 feet high, and it just hung there. I got out of the truck, left the engine running, and walked to the edge of it. No sound, no smell. Just that sickly colored mist, and then the wind picked up from the west, a steady push that rustled the desert scrub and tugged at my jacket. But the fog didn't move. If anything, it shivered, like it felt the wind and didn't like it. I should have left then. Every instinct told me to get back in the truck and drive home. But I had to know. I picked up a chunk of gravel and tossed it in. It didn't clatter to the ground. No sound at all. It just vanished, like the fog had absorbed it. I got back in the truck, heart hammering in my chest, and sat there for a while, trying to convince myself I imagined it. Maybe I just hit a soft patch of dirt. Maybe the fog distorted sound. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. A few minutes later, a sedan came down the highway, late model Nissan Silver, windows tinted. They weren't speeding, but they weren't slowing down either. I honked, waved my arms, tried to flag them down. They didn't even glance at me. I watched them hit the fog. It was like the car melted into it. 1 second, it was there. The next, it wasn't. Not a sound. No brake lights. No tires squealing. Just gone. Then, about 30 seconds later, the horn started. Long and steady. A blaring, constant wail that went on until my ears rang and my stomach turned. I drove away. Fast. I didn't stop until I hit Clint. And even then I sat in the parking lot of a Family Dollar for an hour, shaking like a junkie. The horn was still ringing in my ears. I tried to tell people. Called the county sheriff's office, filed a report. They humored me, took notes, said they'd send someone out. But the way the deputy looked at me, I could tell they'd already written me off as another loony. Over the next week, 3 more cars disappeared. All reported missing along Route 20. All in the same stretch of highway. No sign of accidents. No bodies. Just the same report from other drivers. Fog that didn't move right. Fog that hissed when lights touched it. Fog that pushed back. And then came the truck. It was a livestock hauler, empty, on the way to pick up cattle in Del City. Big rig. Massive engine. The driver was on the phone with his wife when it happened. She told the cop she heard him say, "That fog's coming in fast." And then just ... screaming. They found the truck with the cab halfway in the fog. The trailer was still out on the road, like the whole thing had been pulled in and sliced. Clean off. The horn was blaring. The windshield was cracked from the inside. No blood. No driver. After that, they closed that stretch of road. Put up barriers. Detour signs. The official story was unstable ground from a recent flood. Which was bullshit because it hadn't rained in a month. I tried to stay away. I really did, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About what I saw, about what I didn't see. It gnawed at me. Like something unfinished. So last night, I went back. I took my brother's drone. Figured if I couldn't go in, maybe I could. At least see what was inside. I parked a quarter-mile out, just before the barricades, and launched it. Sent it in low, just over the road. The camera feed was glitchy, but I could see the fog. Still there. Still unmoving. Still wrong. I watched the drone cross the threshold. The feed cut out, but for a split second, I swear I saw something in there. Not a person, not an animal. Something tall, thin, twisting, like bones wrapped in smoke. And then the horn started again. From nowhere, from everywhere, through my phone, through the truck speakers. Like it was inside me. I don't know what the fog is. I don't know where the cars go or what happens to the people in them. But it's still there, and it's not getting smaller. It's growing. It moves at night now. South, mostly, toward the river, toward towns, toward us. I'm writing this from a motel in Las Cruces. Got the TV on, but the volume's low. Not that it matters. The horn's still ringing, and I just checked the window. There's fog on the road. And the wind is blowing the other way. The trip had been long, but it was supposed to be simple. Mason and Kara were driving from Dallas to El Paso to visit her aunt, a retired school teacher with a bad hip and a big house that always smelled like oranges. It was supposed to be one of those quiet road trips, cheap motels, gas station snacks, podcasts, bad singing. They weren't in a rush. Kara was even excited to see West Texas for the first time. Mason just wanted to get there without overheating the engine of his old Civic. They left early, just before dawn, hoping to avoid the worst of the July heat. But halfway through the trip, somewhere between Abilene and Odessa, the sky turned to gray and the air took on that weird heavy feeling, like the weather didn't know what it wanted to be. The GPS and off-brand Garmin Mason had bought at a pawn shop had been acting up all morning. It would occasionally freeze or glitch out, the screen flickering like an old TV before snapping back to normal. They laughed about it at first. Mason called it the possessed piece of junk and banged it lightly every time it lagged. But a little. Past 6 p.m., just outside of a town called Rankin, the GPS rerouted them. Mason had just missed a turn because the screen froze again, and when it rebooted, the voice calmly said, "Recalculating. Faster route found." He glanced over at Kara. "You trust it?" She shrugged, feet up on the dashboard. "I mean, it hasn't steered us totally wrong. And we are running late." So he took the new turn. The road was thinner, less traveled. The yellow lines were cracked and faded. The pavement seemed to hum beneath the tires in a strange way, like a deep vibration that you felt more in your bones than your ears. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, that last sliver of burnt orange giving everything an odd, dying glow. No other cars in sight. The GPS stayed quiet for miles, and Mason started to wonder if it was frozen again. Then, just as Kara started dozing off, the voice came back. "In 1 mile, turn left. Arriving at rest stop." Rest stop. Mason said, more to himself. He didn't remember any rest stops being on this stretch of road, and there hadn't been any signs. Still, the idea of stretching his legs sounded good. His back ached. They could switch drivers. Maybe Kara could take the wheel for a bit. He turned. The road to the rest stop was even narrower, barely more than a gravel path. It wound through what looked like a dead grove of mesquite trees. Their limbs reached overhead like claws, blocking out what was left of the sky. It got dark quick, the kind of dark that seems to drink the light from your headlights. And then, suddenly, the trees opened up into a clearing. There it was. A rest stop dot, sort of dot. It looked old. Not old like built. In the 80s, old like forgotten. Like someone built it 50 years ago and just left it there to rot. A single building stood in the center, shaped like a squat concrete rectangle. No lights, no vending machines. One old payphone box near the side. No cars, no signs. But the GPS chirped again. "You have arrived." Kara rubbed her eyes and sat up. "This is it?" Mason hesitated. "Yeah, I guess." They got out. The air was still thick. Not hot anymore, just heavy. The crickets had gone quiet. No wind. Just the crunch of gravel under their shoes and the soft, slow creak of the car door swinging shut. The buildings. Door was a steel slab with peeling gray paint and a faded handicap accessible sticker. Mason reached for the handle, and it gave easily. It opened with a groan like something waking up after a long sleep. Inside, it was even darker. The single fluorescent bulb on the ceiling flickered weakly, casting jerky shadows across the tile floor. The place stank of mildew and something sharper beneath it, like a dead animal left too long in the sun. There were 2 bathroom doors at the far end, labeled men and women with metal plates half rusted off. A trash can tipped sideways on the floor. Graffiti everywhere, scribbled names, strange symbols, angry words carved deep into the walls like someone used a knife instead of a marker. Mason turned back to the door just to prop it open. That's when he noticed at dot there was no handle on the inside, just a blank metal plate. "What the hell?" he muttered. He tried pushing the door. Nothing. Pulled with his fingers wedged into the side. Still nothing. Kara came over, face scrunched. "It's locked?" "I didn't lock it," he said. "Let me try." She shoved it with her shoulder, kicked at the bottom. The door didn't budge. Something about the silence started to stretch thin around them. Mason looked at the payphone outside, maybe 10 feet away, just past the door. He pulled out his phone, no signal, not even a flicker of a bar. Kara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" She pointed to the far end of the rest stop near the women's bathroom. It sounded like a cough or something dragging. Mason listened. At first, nothing. Then there it was. A soft, slow scrape, like rubber on tile, like someone dragging something heavy behind them. Maybe a rat? He offered, but his voice didn't carry much confidence. He stepped slowly toward the hallway. Kara stayed close. The bathroom doors loomed at the end. The men's room was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. Empty. 2 stalls. A sink with a cracked mirror. The smell of rot was stronger in here, though strong enough that Mason gagged and backed out. Kara had already turned toward the women's room. "Don't," Mason said, but she was already pushing it open. The light inside flickered on, dim and pulsing. "Oh my God," Kara said. He followed her gaze. Inside the far stall, the door hung loose on one hinge. Something was scrawled across the back wall in smeared black marker, or maybe something worse. It read, "Do not look at IT, look at what?" Kara asked. The dragging sound came again, louder now, closer. From behind the building. Mason grabbed her hand. "We need to get out of here." They turned back to the main door, both trying now, shoving their weight into it. Nothing. The flickering light in the ceiling went out completely, plunging the rest stop into pitch black. And that's when they heard it just outside the door. A breath. Wet, labored. Followed by a voice, scratchy and low, like someone trying to speak through torn vocal cords. "You shouldn't be here." Mason fumbled for his phone again, tried turning on the flashlight. It sputtered once and died. His battery, which had been at 45% a minute ago, was now blinking red. 1%, then black. Kara backed against the wall. "Mason," she whispered, "it's in here." Something scraped against the tile again, this time coming from the far bathroom. Then silence. A tap on the wall. Then 2 more, rhythmic, like fingers. They held their breath. Mason counted silently in his head. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. Then the men's room door slammed shut. Not by wind. Not by anything natural. Then a voice, Mason swore it was his own, came from inside the men's room. "Come. Look at me." He turned to Kara. "That was my voice." She nodded, pale. Then came a low, guttural sound like someone trying to laugh and sob at the same time. "You have arrived," the voice said again, but it wasn't the GPS anymore. It was something inside the walls. Mason grabbed Kara's hand. "Window. There's got to be a window." They searched. Nothing. No ventilation, no panels, no gaps. Just sealed concrete, like this place was designed to keep something in or to keep people with it. That's when they noticed the floor tiles weren't quite aligned right. A seam that ran down the center of the room. As they watched, the seam shifted. Not a lot, just enough to make a noise, like 2 slabs of bone grinding together. Then the floor started to open, like a mouth. They ran for the bathroom stalls, the only real shelter. Kara grabbed the broken stall door and yanked it closed just as something long and slick and gray snaked its way out of the gap in the floor. Mason saw it only for a second. No eyes, just rows of human teeth pressed into its skin like someone had stitched mouths all over its body, whispering, always whispering, "Don't look at it. Don't look at it." Mason shut his eyes. The stall door creaked, then stopped. Minutes passed, then hours. They lost time in their doubt. Eventually, when the floor closed and the breathing stopped, they waited longer still. When they finally opened, the door, and stepped out. The rest stop looked normal again. Empty. Still. The door opened easily this time. Outside. The car was gone. The GPS still sat on the sidewalk, screen cracked, repeating softly, "You have arrived. You have arrived. You have arrived." They walked up miles, through desert and dark, until someone picked them up the next morning. A trucker. Nice guy. Didn't ask too many questions. They tried to find the place again later. There was no road where they turned. No trees, no building dot, and on every map they checked, there had never been a rest stop near Rankin. I'm not the kind of guy who scares easy. I've driven trucks for 15 years straight, through dead stretches of desert backwater swamp roads, down highways so dark you feel like you're floating in space. Seen all kinds of things out there, deer jumping out of nowhere, people walking barefoot on I-10 at 3 a.m., tornadoes drop out of the sky like angry gods. But nothing ever stuck with me. Nothing until that night just east of Abilene, headed toward a fuel depot in Tyler. It was late October, and the cold had started creeping in early that year. I remember my breath fogging up the cab, the rattle of my old thermos as I shook the last few drops of coffee loose. The road was empty, just me and a long black ribbon winding through scrubland, lit only by the soft amber glow of my dashboard. And the thin wash of headlights ahead. No moon, no stars. Just darkness pressing in on the truck like a thick, wet towel. That's when I saw her. First time, not in the road, not on the shoulder. No, I caught her face in the rearview mirror. Just a flicker, at first a pale shape in the back seat of the cab. My first thought was, I'm too tired. Hallucinating. Happens to guys who push past rest hours. But I looked again. Quick. Flick of the eyes. She was still there. Sitting dead center, back row, right between the seats. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Her eyes were wide and glassy, like she'd been crying for hours, tears still slick under her lashes. Her hair hung down in stringy clumps, wet-looking, like she'd been dragged out of a river. And she was just staring right at me, into the mirror, into my eyes. I whipped my head around, heart climbing my throat, expecting to see her sitting there behind me, but there was nothing. No one. Empty. I even pulled off the road. Left blinker ticking against the silence. Climbed out, checked the sleeper berth, opened the back. Shined my flashlight under the seats. Nothing. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep. Hell, maybe some kind of weird reflection. Dirty mirror, trick of the lights. But as soon as I climbed back in and flicked my headlights on again, I caught her in the side mirror. Same dead eyes, same stringy hair. Watching me. She didn't move. She didn't wave or speak. She just was sitting where she shouldn't be, where there was no space for her to be. Like she was part of the reflection itself. I drove on, tried to ignore her, but every mirror showed her. Rear view, side view, even the tiny convex mirror mounted under the main on the passenger side. She never blinked, never looked away. Just stared. Dead eyes pinned on mine whenever I looked. She started crying again about an hour later. I didn't hear her at first. You don't hear anything over the growl of a diesel engine at 70 miles per hour. But then I noticed the feeling in my gut. That tightness. Like when someone sobs quietly in a room with you. Like the air gets thick. It was in my ears, behind them. And then the sound did come soft and wet, like a child trying to be quiet in church. Sobbing from somewhere behind me. I reached for the CB mic just to feel something solid in my hand, and when I glanced in the mirror again, she was still there, but her mouth was open now, not moving, just open, the way a corpse's mouth hangs. Open if you forget to close it before rigor sets in. I didn't sleep at the depot. I stayed in the cab that night, locked the doors, kept the engine running. Stared at the mirrors until my eyes felt like they were gonna bleed. Every time I blinked, I expected her to be closer, to be in the cab, to be sitting on the edge of the passenger seat, fingers curling around the dashboard. She WSN single quotes to she stayed in the reflections. Always just a layer of glass away. I tried to forget. Even went to a doctor. Thought maybe I had a tumor or something pressing on my brain. Doc said my blood pressure was high, told me to drink less coffee and more water. Sent me home, but it didn't. Stop. She showed up in sunglasses. Mine. Saw her in the reflection on my damn sunglasses when I checked my face in the truck stop bathroom. Behind me in the stall. Pale fingers wrapped around the edge of the door. I turned, heart hammering, and of course no one there. Just me and the goddamn urinal cakes. She started smiling after that. Not a normal smile. One of those wide, stiff-lipped things that doesn't touch the eyes. Something forced, like a puppet. And the tears didn't stop. She'd cry and smile at the same time, and that was worse somehow. I'd rather her scream. Instead, she just looked at me like she knew something. Like she was waiting for me to remember. She started whispering last week, and I did hear that. Lying in the sleeper, engine off, mirrors covered, I heard her voice. Close, soft, like she was right behind the glass. Don't forget. That's all she says, over and over. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. And the thing is, I think she's right. I have forgotten something. Something I shouldn't have. Keep thinking back, trying to pinpoint it. Every mile I've driven. Every face I've seen. Every shoulder I've passed. And then last night it hit me. I was near the outskirts of a town called Cisco. Small place, nothing but a couple gas stations and a Dairy Queen. Highway 183 southbound. And I remembered something, or maybe someone, years back. Before the company I'm with now. I was hauling for a third-rate outfit based out of Lubbock. Long hours, cash under the table, shady routes. Back then I'd take any gig. One night I picked up a hitchhiker outside Sweetwater. Not supposed to, but she was standing in the rain, barefoot, thumb out. Looked like she'd been through hell. I felt sorry for her. Let her in. She didn't say much. Just sat in the passenger seat, dripping on the upholstery. Eyes on the road. I asked where she was headed. She said, east. That's it, I remember. Dropping her off near a diner just past Cisco. I remember pulling over, her opening the door. And then what? I don't remember her leaving. Don't remember her closing the door. The sound of it. The wait. I remember the diner lights flickering. In the rain. And then I was driving again, alone. That's the gap. That's where the memory breaks. I think something happened. Something bad. And I think she remembers it, even if I don't. That's why she's in the mirrors. In the glass. Watching. Waiting for me to piece it together. She's not going away. Not. Until I do, I tried smashing the mirrors. Duct taping cardboard over the side views. Ripping the damn rear view right off the windshield. It doesn't help. I see her in puddles now, in windows. In chrome bumpers. In the curve of a soup spoon. Always that smile. Always those whispering tears. I haven't slept in 3 days. My hands won't stop shaking. The road feels wrong. Too smooth, too empty. Like something's clearing the way for me. And I think I know I'm getting closer to remembering what I did. I just don't know if I'll survive it when I do. I was driving east on Highway 21, cutting through the pine-choked heart of East Texas just after dusk when the blue and red lights lit up in my rearview mirror. The highway was empty, the kind of lonely 2-lane road that runs straight for miles. Without another car in sight, flanked by woods that seemed to swallow the last traces of sunlight. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't weaving. Hell, I had barely gone over 60, but there they were, those familiar strobing lights filling up the dark behind me like a warning from something older than law. I pulled over slowly, easing onto the gravel shoulder, the crunch of tires loud in the silence. My cell had no bars, not unusual out there. The nearest town, Quirino, I think, was a good 20 miles back. No streetlights. No houses. Just a long ribbon of blacktop flanked by whispering trees. The cop's spotlight came on, cutting through my rear window and filling the cabin with harsh white light. I squinted in the mirror, saw the silhouette of a tall man stepping out of the CRUICR. His hat looked old-fashioned, not one of those soft-crown ones you see nowadays, but the stiff kind with a wide brim like you'd see in a movie from the 70s. I watched him approach. Calm, deliberate, a big man moving like he had all the time in the world. I rolled the window down before he reached me. The night air was thick and warm, heavy with the smell of pine and something else I couldn't place right away. Wet dirt, maybe, or copper. Evening, he said, and his voice was deep, even. Unfriendly, but not aggressive. License and registration. He leaned down just enough for me to get a look at his face. He was pale, almost gray under the brim of his hat, with a sharp jaw and deep-set eyes that didn't seem to blink. His badge glinted in the reflection from the spotlight. "Sure," I said, handing it over. Was I doing something wrong? "You? We're drifting a little? Tired, maybe?" he asked. No friendliness in it, just a statement posed like a question. I shook my head. "I'm fine, just heading home, long drive." He took my documents and stepped back without another word. I watched him in the side mirror, standing between the cars, angled so the spotlight kept me half blinded. He didn't move for what felt like too long. Just stood there, holding my ID like he was waiting for something. Then he turned and walked back to the cruiser. The lights were still flashing. A minute passed, then two. I looked back again. He was just sitting in the car, barely visible. No radio chatter, no movement. The air outside had gone still, unnaturally still, like everything else had gone quiet just for this moment. No insects. No breeze. Just those lights rotating and flashing like they were trying to dig into my head. I started to get a bad feeling. Not your typical traffic stop nerves. Something colder, crawling. I told myself I was being paranoid, but it felt wrong, deeply, almost instinctively wrong. Finally, he came back. But something was off. His face looked different. Not changed, exactly, but I couldn't pin it. His eyes, maybe. Or the way he held his mouth, just a little tighter now. He leaned in again. "You can go," he said, and handed me back my stuff. "Drive safe. Don't drift." I took my license and registration, nodded. "Okay, thanks." He didn't move. Just stood there, eyes locked on me for a moment, too. Long, like he was waiting for me to ask something. But I didn't. I just put the car in drive and pulled back onto the highway. Heart thumping harder than I wanted to admit. It was only when I stopped at a gas station in Crockett an hour later that I looked at the name on the citation he'd written, just a warning, scribbled in an old-school hand I could barely read. Officer R. Murdoch. Badge number 3947. I don't know why, but it stuck with me. Something about that name. It sounded familiar, like I'd heard it somewhere before. On a hunch, I asked the clerk behind the counter, an older guy with a NASCAR cap and faded tattoos, if the name meant anything to him. He stared at the ticket, squinting. Then he looked at me. "Where'd you get this?" "Highway 21, about 20 miles out from Quirino." His face went flat. "You screwing with me?" "No," I said. "Why?" He took the ticket and held it up like it was evidence of something unholy. "That's Roy Murdoch. Guy was a sheriff's deputy out of San Augustine. Died in a car wreck. Head-on collision. Back in '05, I think. Out on 21, right about where you're talking. I laughed at first, or tried to. Come on, he didn't laugh. No joke. I remember it because it was one of those freak things. No skid marks, no nothing. Witness said he was just driven slow, then swerved straight into a semi. Some folks said he fell asleep. Others said he looked like he was running from something. I didn't know what to say. I took the ticket back and looked at it again. The paper felt strange too thick, like it had been cut from something old. Not even the same type as modern citations. No QR code, no scanner box. Just pen and ink. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his eyes in the rear view, the way they never blinked, the way his face had seemed off the second time he came to the window. A couple days later, I started looking deeper. I found an article from the Lufkin Daily News, dated July 11, 2005, Deputy Roy Murdoch, 44, killed in a single vehicle collision with a semi just outside Quireno. Same badge number, 3947. The picture in the article matched the man who pulled me over. Exactly. Same hat, same jawline, same lifeless stare. But here's the thing, he'd been buried with full honors. There was a photo of the funeral, the flag draped. Coffin, the folded triangle handed to his widow. No ambiguity. He'd been dead for nearly 20 years, and yet I'd spoken to him. I tried contacting the San Augustine County Sheriff's Office just to see if it was a joke. Asked about Officer Murdoch, badge 3947. The woman on the phone went quiet for a beat, then said, "I think you're mistaken. That badge was retired after Deputy Murdoch passed. Nobody's worn it since." I told her I'd been pulled over. Gave her the details. The line stayed silent for a long time. Finally she said, "Sir, that happens sometimes." "Excuse me?" "You're not the first," she whispered, like someone might be listening. "That stretch of 21. People say they see him. Usually around dusk. He pulls them over, gives a warning, then disappears. Always the same name, same badge number." I didn't believe it. I couldn't, but she was dead serious. I don't drive that way anymore. Won't. I go 40 miles out of my way just to avoid that stretch of road. But sometimes on dark nights, if I'm near the woods, I get this feeling like someone's watching from the trees. Like a spotlight's about to flick on behind me. Sometimes I even hear gravel crunch, slow and steady, like boots walking up behind me. If you're ever on 21 near Quireno and the lights come up behind you, don't stop. I don't care how real it looks. I don't care if you see the badge, hear the voice, feel the air go cold in your lungs. Just keep driving, because the cop who pulls you over might not be alive, and he might be looking for someone to take his place. I noticed the sign shift directions the first time just past Hillsboro, where Highway 35 splits. It was a clear Sunday evening in October, sun leaking orange across the scrubby landscape, and the air had that dry bite to it, the kind that means summer's dead, but Texas hasn't figured it out yet. I was headed to Dallas, or at least I thought I was. Had a job interview the next morning, a third-round thing I didn't think I'd get, but was too broke not to try. Had my suit in the back, some gas station coffee sweating through its flimsy. Lid in the Q folder, and the GPS yammering at me in that friendly, know-it-all tone. The sign was green and white, ordinary as any other. Dallas 84 Mile SE glanced up at it, registered it without thinking, and kept going. That's the kind of thing your brain files away automatically when you're on a long drive. But maybe 15 minutes later, I passed the same sign again, Austin 142 ML East, that made me slow down. Not slam the brakes slow, just ease up on the gas slow. There's no good reason for an Austin sign to be up here. not this far north. I was heading northeast. Austin should have been 2 hours southwest, unless I'd made a turn somewhere and not noticed. GPS still said I was on the right route. I chalked it up to highway maintenance or some drunk who'd flipped signs as a prank, and I kept driving. But 10 miles after that, the sign came up again. Same pole, same shape, same highway grime caked along its edges, but this time it read, "Turn back a node, not a joke." Not a playful warning. The letters weren't even the normal kind. They looked hand-painted, like someone had scraped the old wording off and slapped these on in a hurry. There was no other traffic. I let my eyes scan the tree line, the long stretches of flat, nothing pressed against the darkening sky. I tried to remember the last vehicle I'd passed. Maybe a pickup an hour back. Since then, nothing. No taillights. No headlights. I told myself it was a prank, some dumb scare tactic. Halloween was coming up, after all. Probably just kids screwing with people, still. I clicked the radio off and turned the AC down. The road kept going, but it changed. Not in a sudden way. There weren't cracks opening up or fog rolling in like a horror movie. It just started feeling different. The asphalt lost its painted lines. First, the center stripe vanished, then the outer ones. It was like I was driving on an old farm road that hadn't seen a paint crew in years. Then came the weird part. I swear. And I mean this, I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times. The road stopped making sense. I came around a bend and saw a sign I'd seen 20 miles earlier. I'd made no turns. Just a long, slow curve through a clump of juniper and dry cedar, and suddenly I was back where I'd already been. This time, the sign said, "You were warned." He pulled over. Finally, there was no shoulder anymore, just gravel. And weeds, like the highway had peeled off its skin. I got out, looked around. My phone had no signal, and the GPS had frozen somewhere back at a Shell station near West. I stood there, trying to hear anything. Wind, birds, crickets, but the air was dead silent. I mean dead. I walked back a few steps to the sign, thinking maybe I'd missed a detail. But when I turned around, my car was gone. No tire marks. No engine sounds. No taillights disappearing into the dark. Gone. I should have panicked. I should have screamed or run. But I just stood there. I remember blinking hard, like I was waking up from a nap I didn't know I'd taken. The air smelled different now. Not earthy or piney like before. More like copper and burnt ozone. I turned around. The road wasn't behind me anymore. Just prairie. Endless dry grass that moved without any wind. I walked in what I thought was the right direction. For maybe an hour, maybe more. The sun dipped beneath the hills and didn't come back up. It was night now, but not like any night I'd ever known. The sky had stars, sure, but they were in the wrong patterns, like a child had taken a crayon and redrawn constellations that didn't exist. That's when I saw the house. No lights on. No driveway. Just sitting there in the middle of nothing. It looked old, 1930s maybe, with warped wooden siding and a porch that sagged in the middle like it had a secret. I knocked. No answer, but the door creaked open, like it had been waiting. Inside. It smelled like dust and heat. Not a soul around, but I heard creaking above me, like someone pacing slowly on the second floor. I called out. Nothing. Then something came down the stairs. I don't want to lie to you or make it sound bigger than it was. It wasn't a monster, not in the Hollywood sense. It was a man. Or had been. But his skin was the color of an old bruise. His eyes pitch black, and he moved like he was underwater. Slow, but constant. He didn't speak. Just walked right up to me and held out his hand. And in it, my car keys. No explanation. No words. Just this quiet, horrifying understanding that if I took them, I was agreeing to something. I didn't. turned and ran out into the black. No flashlight, no map, no idea where the hell I was. I ran until I felt gravel underfoot, until I hit the road again. Except it wasn't the same road. Now it was lined with signs, dozens of them, hundreds. Each one with a new message. You don't learn, stay gone, nitrogen monoxide, more chances you're one of USNO, double. And still, I kept walking. I don't know how long I was out there. A day? A week? Time moved sideways in that place. The sun would rise, then set again 5 minutes later. I stopped feeling hunger, thirst, or exhaustion, just this ache in my bones that said I was forgetting something important. Finally, I saw headlights. A big semi coming down the road at an angle that didn't make sense, like it was sliding between dimensions. The driver never looked at me, just opened the door and let me climb in. He didn't speak, not until we'd driven far enough that the signs were behind us and the road looked normal again. Then he said, "Most don't make it out the first time." I asked him what the hell that place was. He didn't answer, just stared ahead and muttered, "Some roads don't go anywhere you want to be." I was back in Dallas by morning. No time had passed. My phone buzzed with the same alerts I'd gotten. Before the road went strange, the gas station coffee was still warm in the queue folder. The GPS blinked. Back to life. Like nothing happened. But the sign's still out there. I've driven that stretch twice since then. Once by accident, once on purpose. Both times I turned back before I saw the third sign, because I don't know what that place was. But it knew me. And it wanted me to stay. I live out in West Texas, way out past Presidio, where FM 170 curls like a snake alongside the Rio Grande, dipping and rising with the land like it's trying to shake something off its back. It's the kind of road where you can drive an hour and not see another soul. Just border patrol trucks in the distance, the hum of cicadas, and the heat waves off the blacktop. I'm not a trucker or anything, but I do a lot of driving for my job. Remote pipeline inspections. My beat runs all through the Big Bend region, places people don't talk about much. Places even GPS doesn't bother mapping all the way. It was late May when it happened. Storms had passed through earlier that week, and the land was still damp and steaming. I just finished a job near Redford, and I was heading west, aiming to cross into Presidio before sunset. I know FM 170 like the back of my hand. No tunnel on that stretch, not one. The highway follows the river and clings to the cliffs. Closest thing to a tunnel is the overhang at Big Hill, and even that's open on both sides. So when I came up on a tunnel, a real, concrete, rounded tunnel, somewhere just west of Shafter Canyon, I slammed the brakes hard enough that the tires shrieked. I sat there for a minute with my mouth hanging open. It wasn't marked. No construction cones, no signs, no indication that anything had changed. But there it was, tall and wide enough for a semi to pass through, the kind of tunnel you'd see in a city underpass, with thick concrete walls and a gently curving interior that went dark about 10 feet in. I leaned forward, blinking hard. Thought maybe the shadows were playing tricks on me. I'd been driving since 6 in the morning, so I figured I was tired. I rubbed my eyes, took a long drink from my lukewarm water bottle, and stepped out of the truck to take a closer look. The outside of the tunnel was cold to the touch. Cold in 95-degree sun. That should have been my first real warning. The kind of cold that goes bone deep, like touching the side of a freezer. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling somewhere inside, making this slow plunk, plunk, plunk sound that echoed. I looked down at the road. FM 170 ran straight into it. The asphalt disappeared onto the tunnel entrance like it had always been there. I walked in a little, just to see how far it went. My boots hit concrete, and the temperature dropped at least 20 degrees. The sound changed too, muffled, like Someone put thick insulation over my ears. That wet concrete smell hit me hard, along with something underneath it, like rust. Or old meat. I didn't go far. I maybe got 10-15 feet in before something in my gut clenched tight. A hard nope feeling. I backed out fast, got in the truck, and told myself I must have taken a wrong turn somehow. I threw the truck in reverse, turned around, and doubled back east toward Redford to get my bearings. Thing is, I drove east for 10 minutes and nothing looked familiar. I should have passed a rest pullout, then a small cluster of houses. But there was nothing, just the same ridges and cliffs, the same bends in the road. Until, just like before, I came up on the tunnel again. Same spot, same tunnel, same slow drip echoing from within. I hit the brakes again. Harder this time. My hands were slick on the wheel. I stared at it, heart thudding so loud I could hear it. In my ears, I didn't remember turning around. I didn't remember driving back. It was like the road just flipped. I took out my phone to call someone, anyone, but there was no signal. Not even a single bar. Even out here, that was weird. I usually had at least spotty coverage from the towers in Presidio. I got out again. The air smelled different, thicker, like something burning, but not on fire. The smell you get when electronics fry from the inside. This time, I noticed something else writing on the tunnel wall in thick black letters. Not paint, more like charcoal, burnt soot. It said, "He who enters twice may not exit." I stood frozen for a long time. Then, carefully, I walked the length of the tunnel on foot. It wasn't that long, maybe 200 feet, with a gentle curve so you couldn't see all the way through. I kept one hand on the wall the entire time, trying to ignore how wet it felt, like something was bleeding from the concrete. When I came out the other side, everything looked the same. My truck was still where I parked it. I breathed out. Maybe it was some kind of new storm runoff tunnel or reroute. Maybe I just didn't get the memo. I started the truck and drove through. I shouldn't have. I came out the other side, and everything looked the same again. But the tunnel was still ahead of me, like I hadn't gone anywhere at all. I slammed the brakes and looked in the rearview mirror. No tunnel behind me. Only in front. It was the same one, same curve, same dripping ceiling, same writing. Except, this time, the words were different. You passed the first gate. I got out again, heart pounding. The smell was stronger now. The air buzzed, almost like static was clinging to my clothes. I turned back to the truck. The metal was hot again, like it had been baking in the sun for hours, and then I saw something that made my stomach drop. The back left tire, it was flat, torn along the rim like someone had jammed a knife into it and dragged it along. And the side of the truck, 3 deep gouges, not scratches. Gouges, like something with claws had dragged itself out of the concrete and brushed past me while I wasn't looking. That was when I realized there were no sounds, no wind, no birds, not even my own footsteps echoing back. I shouted. Nothing. Not even an echo. I turned, got in the truck, and drove. I told myself I'd keep going west until I hit the Presidio junction, or saw another car, or anything. I passed through the tunnel again. And again. Every time the tunnel was in front of me when I came out. The truck clock ticked forward. 15 minutes, 45, an hour. Each time the message changed. She knows you now. The roads don't belong to you. Why did you look back? That last one, I didn't even remember looking back. I started screaming behind the wheel, not because I thought it would help, just because I couldn't stop myself. I lost track of how many times. I passed through. The writing on the walls got more frantic, scribbled, words I didn't understand, symbols that looked Aztec or maybe older. They moved sometimes, like they were shifting under my eyes. rearranging themselves just out of reach. At one point, I passed through and saw something in the tunnel. A shape, long and pale and wrong, hanging from the ceiling like it was part of the concrete, but writhing in slow, pulsing breaths. No eyes, no face, just a stretch of skin and teeth. I didn't stop that time. Eventually, I don't know how, I passed through and came out into light. Real light. FM 170 looked normal again. The sun was setting. I pulled over and dry heaved into the dirt. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold the steering wheel. There was no tunnel behind me, just the road. I hauled ass to Presidio and checked into the first motel I found. Slept with the lights on and the door locked. My phone buzzed back to life at midnight, pinging me with hours of missed messages and location errors. The truck's tire was fine again in the morning. No gouges, no damage, but the underside was covered in something thick and black, like oil mixed with ash. And there were scratches in the frame, on the inside of the cab, on the steering wheel, on my seatbelt. I haven't told anyone the full story. Not until now, mostly because I still don't know how to explain it. I've avoided FM 170 ever since. Even now, I get this crawling feeling if I look at it on a map too long. But a few weeks ago, a guy from work, new guy, said he took a shortcut on the way back from Redford. Said he saw something weird. Said there was a tunnel on the road that wasn't supposed to be there. I told him he was seeing things. But last night, someone slipped a note under my motel door. 3 words, written in thick black charcoal. She remembers you.